Chapter 2487. In the blood-red sky, a figure was constantly shuttling back and forth. In the entire blood-red sky, there was a powerful blood rock flying. It looked like a golden-winged rock, but its whole body was blood-red and it had infinite power. However, they could not stop this figure from constantly rushing and killing. It was difficult for these people to really hurt this figure. This figure was none other than Yi Shiwen. He kept rushing and killing. After a while, a blood rock was torn apart by his hand and turned into a cloud of blood mist. These blood rock looked very terrifying, but they could not stop Yi Shiwen at all. They were directly killed by him in group. He had been on this ancient road for over 100 years. For a deity, 100 years of seclusion was like taking a short nap. However, if he used this time to fight, it would be a completely different story. Almost every minute and second was very long. It was a kind of torture. Especially at the beginning, it was simply a kind of torture. His strength was suppressed to the early stage of the undead realm, and he could not fully exert a lot of his strength. When he encountered a powerful fierce beast, he could only choose to flee. He even escaped from death several times. It was very terrifying. Even so, he did not let go of the cultivation vest. The effect of the cultivation vest was also very significant. Originally, Yi Shiwen thought that he could not improve anymore. His combat power had almost climbed to the peak of the undead realm, and no one could resist him. However, in the short span of 100 years, his thoughts had been subverted. During these 100 years, he could feel himself growing stronger every minute and every second. He did not know if it was because his cultivation had been suppressed by the cultivation vest, but the bottleneck that he could no longer improve could no longer affect him. He was still improving, still moving forward. After fighting for a while, these blood rock finally became afraid and flew into the distance. Yi Shiwen did not chase after them. If it was 100 years ago, he could only run away when he encountered these blood rock. How could he easily rush and kill like now? In the past 100 years, his strength growth could be imagined. What a powerful murderous aura! At this moment, a powerful murderous aura rushed out from the void. Roar! A gigantic roar of a demonic beast came from afar. The roar was oppressive and made people want to vomit blood. They felt a surge of energy in their chest. In the distance, a formidable ominous beast strode over and directly arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. It was a formidable blood-red liger beast with the head of a lion and the body of a tiger. This strange appearance was perfectly unified on its body. Lion-tiger beast, Yi Shiwen calmly said. This was a blood beast at the middle stage of the undead realm. It was very powerful. Over the past few decades, the two of them had fought many times. Even Yi Shiwen had escaped from death several times because of it. This lion-tiger beast had a powerful aura. Countless amounts of blood qi were condensing, and there seemed to be an astonishing scene of the rising sun and setting moon constantly evolving behind it. "Human, you're here again," the lion-tiger beast said coldly. In the past few decades, this damned human had intruded into its territory time and time again, constantly provoking its dignity. This time, don't even think about walking out alive. The lion-tiger beast's voice was incomparably deep, and it gave people the urge to vomit blood. It could also feel that Yi Shiwen's blood qi was very rich. Devouring this human god, for it, was self-evident that the benefits were self-evident. It could allow it to go further and break through to a more powerful realm. Although they did not cultivate and did not understand the Tao, it did not mean that they did not cultivate. This time, it's hard to say who wants to escape. Yi Shiwen's eyes sharpened. Last time, you grabbed half of my body. Do you think I will come here without any preparation? The last time he came to challenge the lion-tiger beast, in the end, half of his body was grabbed by the lion-tiger beast. It could be said that it was a deep memory. After that time, he had to recuperate for a long time to fully recover. For the undead realm gods, although they had the ability to fully recover as long as they had one cell, it was not without cost. In the past, Yi Shiwen had never suffered such serious injuries. Half of his body was gone, and it could be said that it was a heavy loss. Last time, I only swallowed half of your body, and it made a great progress in my cultivation. This time, I will swallow you together with your godhead. In that case, I want to see if you can still be reborn. The lion-tiger beast said coldly. Boasting shamelessly, if you can, then you can try. Yi Shiwen said coldly. How could he not know how powerful this lion-tiger beast was? However, just like what he said, he was fully prepared before coming here. Even if I am wearing a cultivation vest, it is enough to kill you. Yi Shiwen instantly attacked and slapped out. The big hand suddenly rose against the wind, and became bigger and bigger. It was burning with Nanmingli fire, and directly grabbed towards the lion-tiger beast. This kind of fire, under Yi Shiwen's years of cultivation, was even more powerful than many experts of the Phoenix clan. It was a powerful fire that could burn undead realm experts alive. Roar! This lion-tiger beast was even more astonishing. It roared loudly, and the terrifying sound waves caused countless fluctuations of blood energy in the sky. These fluctuations formed a monstrous wave, and directly annihilated the Nanmingli fire on Yi Shiwen's palm. Even Yi Shiwen's claw attack was completely destroyed. But at this time, the lion-tiger beast finally moved and clawed towards Yi Shiwen. The claw transformed into a sharp ray of light, just like a sharp sword, and it seemed as if it was going to cut open the world. You are much stronger than the last time we met. It seems that swallowing half of my body has greatly improved your strength. Yi Shiwen's expression was abnormally cold, and the Thunder Dragon halberd appeared in his hand, and instantly slashed out. In an instant, the two sides directly collided. Bang! A loud roar sounded, and the lion-tiger beast's attack was stopped. Its claw and the Thunder Dragon halberd directly collided, and a sound of metal colliding was heard. However, the attack had just begun, and Yi Shiwen's Thunder Dragon halberd unexpectedly erupted with endless power of thunder. This power of thunder directly condensed into a Thunder Dragon, opened its bloody mouth, and rushed towards the lion-tiger beast on the spot. The lion-tiger beast's reaction was not slow, and it directly took a step forward, and its body turned into a mass of blood light, and instantly appeared hundreds of kilometers away. A powerful blood chi erupted from its body, and destroyed the power of thunder that had jumped on its body in an instant. How is it? This is just the beginning, Yi Shiwen said. Now, I will show you my current progress. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and his whole body turned into a mass of thunder and lightning, and the surrounding also turned into a world of thunder and lightning. Die for me! In the mass of thunder and lightning, Yi Shiwen's palm turned down, and turned into a sky flipping seal, and as if the sky had turned upside down, it slapped towards the lion-tiger beast. It seems that I have underestimated you, but you are not the only one who has made progress in the past few years. The lion-tiger beast's body suddenly stood up, and the bloody light on its body instantly turned into a sharp sword, and soared into the sky. This was its innate magical power. Although it was in the form of a beast, in fact, all kinds of attacks, it was like a sword master and very terrifying. Boom! It was another even more shocking collision, and the momentum of both sides seemed to be completely boosted, and the killing became more and more intense. Clang! 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 There was a loud clanging sound, and the blood chi on the lion-tiger beast's body instantly turned into a sharp sword, and enveloped Yi Shiwen. Such a sword cultivation was enough to make many sword gods feel ashamed. Yi Shiwen's understanding of the law of sword could also be said to have reached a kind of extreme. Only at this level, and you want to deal with me? Yi Shiwen attacked left and right, and each of his punches and kicks could burst a sword energy. It's useless, falling into my blood-killing array, even the great Luo immortals can forget about escaping. The lion-tiger beast's face revealed a somewhat sinister smile, and it looked very strange. Really? Yi Shiwen laughed out loud, and his hand pinched a complicated seal. I already told you that I'm different from before. Do you still think that I'm a fish on your chopping board? Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon. He suddenly patted with one hand, and the infinite power of thunder continued to condense in his hand, setting off monstrous fluctuations, and directly formed a terrifying cannon barrel, and bombarded. Boom! The sword formation that was condensed by the infinite blood chi killing swords was destroyed on the spot, and the terrifying energy still bombarded the lion-tiger-beast's body at an astonishing speed. Bang! The lion-tiger-beast's body was bombarded into a bloody mess, and its entire body flew out on the spot. Roar! The lion-tiger-beast roared, and its entire body fell to the ground. Yi Shiwen sneered. It wasn't that he didn't do anything for more than 100 years, because most of his spiritual power had been devoured by the cultivation avatar, and this forced him to modify some of his moves to the extent that they could withstand his current spiritual power. The Lightning Emperor's sky-piercing cannon with one hand was the greatest achievement. The Lightning Emperor's sky-piercing cannon with one hand did not require a long period of preparation. Most importantly, the consumption of magic power was greatly reduced. Of course, its power would definitely decrease by a lot. However, in terms of practicality, it was much more practical than the complete version. Hans seal. Yi Shiwen stepped out, and his hand transformed into an ancient divine mountain, and pressed down. Boom! The lion-tiger-beast couldn't dodge in time, and was bombarded. It was almost smashed into meat paste by Yi Shiwen's Hans seal. When Yi Shiwen attacked again, the lion-tiger-beast burned the blood pill in its body, and escaped from his hand. It was panting in the distance, and looked at Yi Shiwen vigilantly. It was in a sorry state, and no longer had its previous insufferably arrogant appearance. Chapter 2488. There was still endless horror in his eyes. He seemed to be completely unable to understand how this human god in front of him could have such an amazing breakthrough in less than 100 years. A few decades ago, he was still chased all over the world by him and almost lost half his life. But now, he actually had enough strength to compete with him. No, even more tyrannical strength than him. Yi Shiwen grinned and looked at the lion-tiger-beast. He sneered. If it were not for the restriction of the cultivation vest, it would not be difficult to deal with this lion-tiger-beast. However, this lion-tiger-beast was indeed tyrannical. Compared to the middle-stage undead realm in the outside world, it was more than 10 times more tyrannical. It was almost comparable to Yi Shiwen in the past. No one knew how it was born so tyrannical. Otherwise, even if his speed and strength were restricted by the cultivation vest, with the strength of his physical body, he would not have been beaten without the strength to fight back. But now everything was different. After hundreds of years of tempering, he had returned to the middle stage undead realm. It matched his realm and was even more powerful. He could feel that he was breaking through the limit and reaching an even more amazing realm. He had never thought that he actually had such a great potential that had not been stimulated. No wonder the Cultivation Bible said that the human body was a small world, endless and supreme. The lion-tiger-beast panted heavily. He could feel that the man in front of him seemed to have experienced a kind of nirvana. He had an astonishing aura. However, it was impossible for him to surrender without putting up a fight. He roared, and the spiritual power of his whole body was burning. Powerful fierce beasts condensed on his body. Their eyes were lifeless, but their hostility soared to the sky. These were the remnant thoughts of the powerful blood beasts that he had killed. He had locked them around him. These fierce beasts formed a frenzy and shrouded Yi Shiwen, wanting to tear him apart alive. Bang! Yi Shiwen blew up a fierce beast with a punch. This fierce beast's body was blown up into a mass of blood chi. But this mass of blood chi instantly turned into a mass of hostility and rushed towards Yi Shiwen, directly rushing into his mind. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood the true meaning of this move. The most troublesome thing was not these ominous beasts, but those evil energies. However, he wasn't worried in the slightest. Sure enough, the moment the evil chi rushed into his body, the mysterious space within his body began to revolve frantically, unexpectedly absorbing the evil chi. Although he hadn't figured out the origin of this mysterious space, he knew one thing. The compatibility of this mysterious space was terrifying. No matter what kind of energy it was, as long as it was energy, it would not be picky and would devour it all. Evil chi was also a kind of spiritual energy. As long as it was energy, it couldn't escape the devouring of the mysterious space. Although he didn't have the enlightening mind ancient tree to stabilize his mind so that he wouldn't be affected, but he had experienced a lot over the years. His will was already incomparably firm. It would be too easy to turn him into an idiot just by relying on his evil chi. Bang! 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 These ominous beasts were blasted by him one after another. Endless evil chi rushed into his mind, making his eyes begin to turn a little blood red. The star beast bloodline in his body also began to stir. Ha ha ha! Damn human god, now it's finally time for you to die. The liger beast finally confirmed that Yi Shiwen had been affected. It laughed wildly and rushed over along with the tide of ominous beasts. It opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Yi Shiwen. At that critical moment, Yi Shiwen, who seemed to be about to go crazy, suddenly recovered his calmness and suppressed the fierceness brought by the star beast bloodline. He turned around and blasted out a punch. Human Dao Fist. His punch directly blasted through the liger beast's head on the spot. The horrifying human Dao Fist's artistic conception continued to evolve in it, turning into a world that constantly exploded in the liger beast's body. Boom! In a series of explosions, the liger beast's body exploded on the spot and turned into blood all over the sky. These blood contained endless laws, which were directly engraved on the blood bead. Yi Shiwen opened his mouth and absorbed these blood beads into his body. A powerful energy ran in his body. This liger beast was indeed an extremely powerful blood beast. The blood essence of many years of cultivation contained infinite power. Now all of it was absorbed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's combat power, which had just broken through to the indestructible realm intermediate stage, had also been completely consolidated. Although his combat power had just been restored to the indestructible realm intermediate stage, it was several times stronger than when he broke through to the indestructible realm intermediate stage previously. If he hadn't used the cultivation vest and cultivated on this ancient road, he might not have discovered that he still had such great potential that had not been unearthed. It's time. I'd like to see how terrifying those 9 tests are, Yi Shiwen said faintly. It took him a full 100 years to recover the strength that matched his realm. Only then did he have the confidence to challenge the first test. According to the Lord of Flames, the stronger one was in the same realm, the more likely he would be able to pass the test. However, under the suppression of the cultivation vest, he didn't even have the strength of his original realm. Naturally, he wouldn't consider challenging the test. Now was finally the time. Thinking of this, his figure directly turned into a ball of lightning and went deep into the ancient road. After spending half a day, Yi Shiwen came to the depths of the ancient road and stood in front of a huge stone hall. This stone hall was covered in moss, and the marks of time could be seen everywhere. Traces of weathering could be seen everywhere. A feeling of a long history surged in his heart. He went straight into this stone hall. The center of the stone hall was very spacious, and there was only a stone statue. The stone statue was of a handsome young man, holding a long sword and floating on the sea of blood. It was vivid and lifelike. Although it was only a stone statue, it had a kind of terrifying power. Suddenly, the stone statue suddenly opened its eyes. The young man looked at Yi Shiwen, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Yi Shiwen was shocked, but when he looked again, he found that it was gone again. Everything had returned to its original appearance. Could it be that I saw it wrong? This unforeseen event just now gave him a big fright. Below this stone statue was a transmission matrix. It was exactly the same as the transmission matrix that teleported from the Sea of Blood to the ancient road. It was obvious that it was set up by the same person. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and stepped into the transmission matrix. In an instant, he was teleported to an ancient space. As far as the eye could see, it was an ancient land. He didn't know where this place was, but towering trees could be seen everywhere. It was like a scene of primordial chaos. "You're here!" An old voice came from afar. He saw a young man walking step by step from afar. He was a handsome man who looked like he was in his 20s. He was wearing clothes that were completely different from the current style. In fact, his clothes were even more ancient than the most ancient style that Yi Shiwen had ever seen. For a cultivator, it was difficult to determine his age just by looking at his appearance. On the contrary, one could guess his age by looking at the clothes he was wearing. Every era had its own style of clothes, so it was often easier to guess his age. This young man's clothes were embroidered with azure dragon, vermilion bird, white tiger, and black tortoise. These were actually the 4 sacred symbols. These 4 sacred symbols didn't seem to be embroidered by a needle and thread. Instead, it gave him a feeling that these were living creatures, and then they were caught and sealed inside. This made him instantly vigilant. This young man gave him an extremely terrifying feeling. An indescribable and terrifying coercion was crushing his body. "Who are you?" Yi Shiwen asked. He had already confirmed in his heart that this young man was the protagonist of this test. "I'm 4 sacred symbols supreme," the young man indifferently said. He glanced at Yi Shiwen and his eyes were as sharp as a blade, making people suck in a mouthful of cold air. 4 sacred symbols supreme. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes wide. He felt that this name was very familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere. At this time, he suddenly remembered that in the ancient myths and legends, in the mythological era, there was such a powerful figure who had competed with the heavens and lived as long as the earth. His name was 4 sacred symbols supreme. Because it was too long ago, there were very few legends and records about 4 sacred symbols supreme. However, the only existing records often described him as invincible, powerful, and so on. The opponent of this assessment was actually such a legendary figure. "State your name," 4 sacred symbols supreme said in a dull tone. "Junior Yi Shiwen, I'm here to challenge you," Yi Shiwen said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. He had respect for this legendary figure, but he didn't want to admit defeat. "Good," 4 sacred symbols supreme said indifferently. His voice had barely faded when the surrounding space instantly shattered. His whole body was like an ancient divine mountain that was suppressing down. In just a flash, Yi Shiwen felt an extraordinary and terrifying pressure crushing down. He could also feel that 4 sacred symbols supreme's cultivation was indeed at the intermediate stage of undead realm, similar to his own. However, his fighting strength was much stronger than that of the previous lion-tiger beast. That lion-tiger beast was also extraordinary in the outside world. It was hard to find an opponent in this realm, but this 4 sacred symbols supreme was much stronger than him. Were these ancient mythological figures really so terrifying? Or was it because they had appeared on this ancient road that they were particularly terrifying? "However, I will not lose," Yi Shiwen roared and his body's imposing aura burst out. Chapter 2489. "However, I will not lose," Yi Shiwen roared and his imposing aura burst out. Yi Shiwen did not show any weakness. Even if the opponent was the legendary 4 symbol supreme, he would not give up. Not to mention that this was just an illusion, even if the real body was standing in front of him, he would still dare to throw a punch. The Thunder Dragon halberd appeared in his hand. Countless Thunder Tao principles condensed into talismans and continuously fluttered on the Thunder Dragon halberd. Although he wasn't afraid, it didn't mean that he would underestimate this legendary figure. Any one of these people was an existence that stood above others in their generation, and they gave him a lot of pressure. He had to fight with all his strength. White tiger seal. Four Symbols Supreme's palm changed and instantly turned into a huge tiger head. It was as if a white tiger had descended and rushed out of his palm. The whole scene was extremely terrifying. Boom! The two fiercely collided with each other, and the sound of metal clashing broke out. The white tiger seal of Lord Four Symbols transformed into a white tiger and entangled with the thunder dragon on Yi Shiwen's thunder dragon halberd. White tiger, one of the Four Symbols' true spirits, represented the existence of Western heptametal and slaughter. And Yi Shiwen's thunder dragon was extremely destructive. It was one of the most terrifying destructive forces in the world. The collision of the two sides was so terrifying that the surrounding space was shattered. The laws collapsed and engulfed each other. The terrifying energy waves spread out and engulfed both sides. For a moment, the figures of both sides could not be seen. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Shiwen retreated a few steps, and barely managed to stop his footstep. The opposite Four Symbols Supreme also retreated a few steps, and stopped under the control of the magic power condensed to protect him. In this blow, the two sides were evenly matched. It should be said that Yi Shiwen was slightly at a disadvantage. Yi Shiwen was constantly panting. The Four Symbols Supreme in front of him was really terrifying. He was very clear that compared to the time when he had just broken through to the Eternal Realm, he did not know how much more tyrannical he was now. Now, he could easily defeat his past self without any difficulty. However, in the face of Four Symbols Supreme, he was completely at a disadvantage. His eyes were firmly fixed on Four Symbols Supreme. The mysterious space inside his body was frantically operating, trying to analyze everything about Four Symbols Supreme. In the short exchange just now, he had a feeling that there were no flaws in his defense. Four Symbols Supreme Monarch's physical body and divine ability could be said to be flawless. In particular, Yi Shiwen had a whole new level of respect for his physical cultivation. The collision just now had actually made his hands slightly numb. For an illusion to be able to reach such an astonishing level was enough to make him look at it in a new light. He did not know if the real body would be more terrifying than this illusion. It should be more terrifying. He knew very well that he was fighting against one of the most amazing people in history. He should be satisfied with this result. However, he was not satisfied. Even if an imperial emperor who had yet to attain the Tao stood in front of him, he would still have the resolve to throw a punch. It seems that there's no way to use tricks. I can only face it head-on. Come on, let's have a good fight and see who's stronger. Yi Shiwen's lips curled into a smile, and he said indifferently. He didn't let go of his cultivation disguise because it was meaningless. This Four-Element Supreme was just a kind of training for him. If he let go of his cultivation disguise, it would be meaningless. He also needed such a top battle to verify what he had learned. In the future, when he entered the Kurfürst Road, he might be such a monster. Whoosh! The figure of Four-Element Supreme suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he actually appeared directly in front of Yi Shiwen. The speed was even faster than the reaction speed of Yi Shiwen's Eye of Redemption. Bang! However, Yi Shiwen was already prepared. The Thunder Dragon halberd directly slashed down and hit the protective white tiger of Four-Element Supreme. Boom! A terrifying force swept out in an instant. The infinite energy couldn't find a vent, so it could only form a mushroom cloud and slowly rise up. Humph! Yi Shiwen only heard a cold snort. He saw a figure tearing the mushroom cloud and attacking him. The power of the white tiger sprang out from his hand and turned into a sharp sword that tore the sky. The sword light shrouded Yi Shiwen and wanted to hack him to death on the spot. Four-Element Supreme had the power of 4 elephants. He was also the most amazing group of people since ancient times. With the power of 4 elephants, he could even change the world. Now he only showed the power of the white tiger, and it was already so terrifying. However, how could Yi Shiwen's learning be bad? He casually formed the Thunder Emperor Sky Cannon in his hand and blasted it out. Boom! A huge roar seemed to reverberate in the sky and on the ground. The destructive power of thunder instantly broke the endless sword light and blasted the body of 4 Element Supreme. The white tiger wrapped around his body opened its mouth and swallowed Yi Shiwen's Thunder Emperor Sky Cannon. Explode! Do you think my things are so easy to swallow? Yi Shiwen suddenly pinched a seal, and an invisible spiritual wave instantly fluctuated. Boom! There was another huge explosion. The Thunder Emperor Sky Cannon that was swallowed by the white tiger exploded on the spot, and the white tiger was blown into pieces. 4 Element Supreme was also affected. Many parts of his clothes were blown up and he was quite embarrassed. His face no longer had that indifferent look. His expression became incomparably dignified. It seemed as if this wasn't just an illusion, but a powerful existence with consciousness. Could it be that this isn't an illusion, but someone found the will of the 4 symbols supreme and condensed it into this illusion? It would be terrifying if this is the case. Yi Shiwen was secretly shocked. He guessed a possibility. It couldn't be so terrifying if it was just an illusion. On the opposite side, 4 Element Supreme's expression began to become cold. He truly regarded Yi Shiwen as a worthy opponent. His body was no longer wrapped around by the white tiger. Instead, it was replaced by the black tortoise. This meant that he had begun to get serious. The white tiger was the representative of the Western heptagold. It represented endless killing. The black tortoise represented endless defensive ability. It was completely different from the white tiger. Crash! There was an ear-piercing sound. Yi Shiwen saw 4 Element Supreme moving. In an instant, a powerful vermilion bird appeared under his feet. Its speed was extremely fast. It pressed down towards Yi Shiwen with an incomparably terrifying pressure. On top of his head, an azure dragon phantom appeared. It constantly poured the Imu real Qi into 4 Element Supreme's body from afar. It allowed him to maintain his peak state at all times. He was very powerful and terrifying. The 4 Element Supreme's true spirits had all manifested. All of a sudden, the laws of the world resonated with him. It seemed as if he could control everything in the world. He was the Celestial Emperor. As soon as he appeared, the 4 directions would fluctuate. 4 Element Supreme ruled the world. Any step he took had a terrifying power that could collapse the world. It was not something that ordinary people could compare with. Yi Shiwen had a dignified look on his face. He tightly grasped the Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand. His entire body instantly transformed into a sea of thunder and lightning. He wouldn't just stand by and watch as the 4 symbols supreme completely controlled the world with his power of 4 symbols. This was a competition for the principles and the world itself. Whoever lost would fall into a disadvantageous position in the following battles. Then a terrifying scene appeared around 4 Element Supreme's body. The void around his body was suppressed by his imposing aura. However, it was repaired by the laws. This scene of continuous collapse and continuous recovery was extremely shocking from a distance. He could easily suppress an expert at the peak of the intermediate stage of undead realm to death. He did not even need to make a move. Just by relying on his imposing aura, it was already terrifying enough. A thunder dragon emerged from the Thunder Dragon halberd and soared into the 9th heaven. It unexpectedly contended with the power of 4 Element Supreme and directly collided with it. Bang! An earth-shattering collision sound was heard. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked, turning into pieces of fragments. The fight between the two had far exceeded the strength of this realm. It was very shocking to watch. 4 Element Supreme didn't speak much. However, his words were extremely terrifying. Crash! There was another intense tearing sound in the vast sky. Astonishing rays of light burst out from the eyes of 4 elements supreme. The images of 4 different mythological beasts were constantly rotating in his eyes. This kind of power directly broke through the blue dome of the sky and bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. This was an extremely terrifying magic eye. The power of the 4 mythological beasts had condensed in his eyes. Its might was astonishing when it erupted. Yi Shiwen was not to be outdone. The power of redemption emerged in his eyes. The power of redemption formed a domain of redemption in front of him. This amazing power of the 4 mythological beasts broke through the sky. After entering the domain of redemption, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. It was cleanly dissolved in a short while. This power of redemption counterattacked and blasted towards 4 elements supreme. The world seemed to have fallen into a sound of condemnation. You are guilty. You should be judged. Countless voices were denouncing 4 symbols supreme monarch. This was an extremely shocking method. Humph! 4 elements supreme didn't even look at it. The power of redemption directly hit Black Tortoise on the spot. However, it couldn't do anything to Black Tortoise. It collapsed on the spot with a muffled sound. At this time, 4 elements supreme once again rushed over. He had completely released his aura. It was terrifying to the extreme. The surrounding area had turned into the domain of the power of the 4 mythological beasts. He was the invincible ruler of the world here. A white tiger sword seal transformed into a long sword. It instantly swept down like a waterfall. It collapsed the void and rushed towards Yi Shiwen's face. It wanted to kill him on the spot. Bang! The collision between the 2 sides was even more astonishing. Yi Shiwen's Thunder Dragon halberd didn't slow down. It followed closely. The sky instantly collapsed and turned into powder, revealing endless chaos. This collision surpassed all the previous ones. It also meant that both sides had begun to use their trump cards. Chapter 2490. 4 Elements Supreme didn't intend to stop even though his attack had failed. His offensive became even more rapid, just like a storm. He wanted to use quick attacks to defeat Yi Shiwen. His speed could only be described with one word: fast. The vermilion bird under his feet had almost turned into a ball of fire, making his speed soar to the extreme. Fortunately, this person was Yi Shiwen. If it was someone else, they would not be able to keep up with such speed. If they could not even keep up with the speed, how could they defeat 4 symbols supreme? The sword light tore the void crack and slashed towards Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen put away the Thunder Dragon halberd and replaced it with the Sky Flipping Seal. Boom! 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 The violent collision was endless. The 2 sides fought all the way to the sky. The splashing energy shattered the vacuum. If the 2 were to fight in the outside world, they could destroy a small world at any time. 4 symbols supreme launched all kinds of endless attacks, trampling the vacuum. His whole body was like an ancient divine mountain, constantly rushing towards Yi Shiwen. With the protection of Black Tortoise, he almost did not have to consider the problem of defense. He just had to continue to kill. This terrifying fighting method was enough to give many people a headache. However, Yi Shiwen also did the same at this time. His tyrant golden body coupled with the thunder battle armor was even better than 4 symbols supreme in terms of defense. The terrifying energy swept out in all directions. At this time, there was no skill to speak of. It could only be said that it was a completely head-on battle. 4 symbols supreme was extremely strong. Moreover, Azure Dragon was constantly providing Imu Jinqi from afar. It was almost endless. After a long time, Yi Shiwen fell into a disadvantage. Most of his spiritual power was supplied to the cultivation vest. Moreover, the Phoenix regeneration technique was also suppressed by the cultivation vest. His recovery ability was simply not comparable to the level of 4 symbols supreme. It was not a big deal in a short time. However, after a long time, he would be exposed. Let's fight quickly. Yi Shiwen immediately gritted his teeth and said. He also wanted to fight with a world-class character like Four Symbols Supreme. Every time they fought, the opponent's exquisite swordsmanship and magical power made him feel a sense of amazement. However, his spiritual power did not allow him to do so. He did not have so much time. After a blow forced Four Symbols Supreme to retreat, Yi Shiwen began his counterattack. He directly stepped on the sky and his body broke out a kind of domineering aura. In his hand, the ruler's sword instantly broke out. World domination! His sword swept across, breaking the world. This sword would kill all of the people who did not surrender in this world. An astonishing killing intent burst out from Xixiang Supreme's eyes. In a short period of time, the power of the 4 elephants burst out from his body. The 4 powerful divine beasts on his clothes suddenly manifested and turned into 4 powerful fierce beasts to protect him. He pinched an incantation gesture, and the 4 ferocious beasts transformed into 4 streams of astonishing energy. Red, yellow, white, and green. They shot out like energy cannons, condensing into a mass in midair and colliding with Yi Shiwen's ruler's sword intent. Both sides used their trump cards. In a flash, endless divine radiance surged out. The radiance blotted out the sky and the earth. The concept of martial arts of both sides manifested one after another. The energy tide of the 4 symbols' power suddenly manifested in the boundless radiance. It formed a huge matrix to strangle Yi Shiwen. 4 symbols' real spirit formation. This was the real killer move of 4 Symbols Supreme. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen in one move. Clang! A figure soared into the sky from Yi Shiwen's ruler's sword. It was an emperor who dominated the world. He held a long sword in his hand and wore an imperial robe. He had a terrifying, imposing manner. His eyes were incomparably deep. One could faintly see the birth and destruction of the universe in his eyes. The moment this figure appeared, all the great paths were suppressed. This was an imperial emperor who ruled over the world. Only imperial emperors could cultivate such swordsmanship. Apart from imperial emperors, who else in the world could be called a ruler? The 4 symbols' real spirits grew larger and larger. They were now tens of thousands of meters tall, but the figure didn't change in the slightest. He was still the size of an ordinary person, but his aura firmly suppressed everything around him. This was a paragon emperor hidden within the sovereign lord's sword will, an invincible figure who had swept through everything under the heavens. And yet, he was facing off against the 4 beasts' true sovereign, who had once been invincible under the heavens. Clearly, he wasn't backing down at all. Clang! The emperor immediately attacked. He slashed out with his sword, but a terrifying sword light swept through the world. This was an invincible figure, and he wouldn't allow anyone to disrespect him. Boom! The sword light slammed into the 4 symbols' real spirit formation. The formation trembled violently, and the 4 symbols' real spirits roared. The power of the 4 symbols formed an even more astonishing attack that blasted towards the emperor. Boom! 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 In that instant, the terrifying attacks from both sides were completely unleashed. Both of their techniques were beyond what a person of their level should be capable of. In the blink of an eye, they clashed hundreds of times. Bang! The emperor was instantly reduced to nothingness by the 4 symbols' real spirit formation. But at the same time, the 4 symbols' real spirits shrieked and turned into nothingness as well. Just at this moment, 4 Symbols Supreme's attack arrived in a flash. The sword light cut a huge wound on Yi Shiwen's body and blood flowed out. Half of Yi Shiwen's body was almost chopped into pieces by 4 Symbols Supreme. However, 4 Symbols Supreme didn't follow up with another attack. A gaping hole had appeared in his body, and blood was pouring out of it. Yi Shiwen had no time to dodge in that critical moment. Gritting his teeth, he decided not to dodge, and instead clashed head-on with 4 Symbols Supreme. In a battle between experts, the slightest difference was the difference of 1,000 miles. Even a small difference was enough to determine the victor. Of course, this was also because of the terrifying strength of their bodies. If it had been anyone else, they would have been dead by now. For Symbol Supreme didn't care about the wound on his body. After a moment of hesitation, he pounced on Yi Shiwen. The power of the white tiger in his hand turned into a long sword and slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen clenched his teeth and roared. The Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand instantly erupted and collided with his opponent. Bang! The terrifying power of both sides collided. Yi Shiwen's gilded tyrant form and Four Symbols Supreme's power of the Four Symbols had a huge impact on each other's body. Puff! Puff! More blood gushed out of their bodies. In that instant they were seriously injured by each other. Their injuries hadn't healed yet, but they were further aggravated. Both sides were fighting with their lives on the line. Four Symbols Supreme wasn't his real body, but a condensed form of martial will. Such a battle didn't affect him in the slightest. But Yi Shiwen was different. He was his real body, but Four Symbols Supreme's attacks were endless. It was impossible for him to stop even if he wanted to. I'm not willing to give up. So what if I'm an ancient mythical figure? I must surpass you all. Yi Shiwen's eyes burst with amazing light. He finally understood why the Flame Lord said that this was a test. Under the same level, how many people dared to say that they could compete with these people? Just this Four Symbols Supreme in front of him had forced him into a dead end. The others were even more terrifying than this. They were getting more and more terrifying each time. He couldn't imagine how strong the people at the end would be. It was no wonder that no one had been able to defeat all 9 of them since ancient times. It was simply an inconceivable legend, unless he had already cultivated to an unprecedented realm. If that was the case, it would be unimaginable to what extent his strength would increase. His opponent wasn't his real body. Many of his moves were more unscrupulous. This was an advantage that Yi Shiwen couldn't compete with. Four Element Supreme looked at Yi Shiwen coldly, and unceasingly pinched the seals. His body had improved by a notch, and his imposing aura was also crazily growing. His blood and chi were burning. He was burning the blood and chi of his entire body. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen in one blow. It didn't matter even if his body collapsed. Kill! For Symbols Supreme finally opened his mouth. He shouted and condensed all the murderous aura in the world. The sword light shot out. It seemed as if this sword had blocked all the space to dodge. No matter where one fled, one couldn't escape this attack. Yi Shiwen saw that he couldn't dodge, so he could only clench his teeth and fight with his opponent. Bang! The Thunder Dragon halberd and the long sword fiercely collided. It was only a moment, but a terrifying force rolled out in all directions. There was a huge explosion. A figure was sent flying upside down. Blood splashed in the sky. Yi Shiwen immediately fell into a disadvantageous position after Four Symbols Supreme had ignited his own blood and chi regardless of the cost. This should have been an evenly matched battle. Yi Shiwen felt that his whole body was about to collapse. The wound on his body that had almost been split in half hadn't healed yet. Now it was about to burst open again. Four Symbols Supreme ignored his injuries, and once again rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. His body crashed into the space and shattered it. Come on, this is the last blow to decide the winner! Yi Shiwen roared and pinched the seals. A huge thunder cannon took shape behind him. It instantly sucked out all his spiritual power and fed it into the thunder cannon. Bang! The Thunder Emperor sky-piercing cannon exploded, and a terrible thunderbolt energy bombarded out. Four Element Supreme was too close to dodge, and was instantly hit head-on. He didn't even have the time to scream, and was directly evaporated. Hoo-hoo! Yi Shiwen half knelt down. He was gasping for breath. Blood dripped down and fell into the ground. He would have been killed by Four Symbols Supreme if he had hesitated for even half a second. The situation could be described as extremely thrilling. Chapter 2491. Xixiang True Lord was very strong. At least when he was outside, he had never seen anyone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Xixiang True Lord. And the next 8 were all stronger than the last. This was a gradual process. On the other hand, if the first one he challenged was not Xixiang True Lord, but Xixiang True Lord was the last one, then his strength would be much stronger than it was now. This was also a kind of extreme training, challenging the limits and surpassing the limit. Just one of them was already so powerful. How terrifying would the next 8 be? It seemed that there was no way to break through in the short term. Once he broke through to the late stage of the imperishable realm, then all his previous efforts would be for naught. He had a feeling that if he continued to train like this, he might reach a level that he had never reached before. It was said that quantitative change led to qualitative change, and that qualitative change would overwhelm quantitative change. Sages could crush imperishable realm experts because they had condensed divine kingdoms. But on the other hand, when quantitative change reached a certain level, could it overwhelm qualitative change? This thought popped up in his mind for the first time. Before this, he had been trying his best to find a way to contend against the divine kingdom of the sage realm, including the sky spill world and analyzing Ao Chaozong's divine kingdom, and so on. In fact, it was all for the sake of preparing for his Kurfürst road. But now that he had entered this ancient road, he found another way. Originally, this was just wishful thinking because his strength had been raised to the limit, and quantitative change could not overwhelm qualitative change. But now it was different, and he could give it a try. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel excited. There was no doubt that this was more challenging and more possible. Thinking of this, his eyes lit up. This was a brand new path. A path that could lead to the heavens. It was said that some of the ancient geniuses could even fight and kill titled kings. What methods did they rely on? One had to know that the difference between a king-ranked cultivator and a divine lord of the sage plane was even greater than the difference between a divine lord and an imperishable realm cultivator. They were able to do it while avoiding a qualitative change, all because they had the power to do it. When the power reached a certain level, it was enough to destroy everything. Thinking of this, he understood that he was right. It was just that he did not have the conditions before, and there were not so many powerful creatures for him to train in. Yi Shiwen didn't continue to challenge the ancient road after the restoration was almost complete. Instead, he left this stone palace and rushed towards the depths of the ancient road. The deeper one went on the ancient path, the more ferocious existences there were. It was even said that in the deepest part of the ancient path, there were existences that even king-ranked formidable martial artists feared. This was what many people in the hidden valley had discovered. This ancient road had existed for a very long time. There was no way to verify it. Yi Shiwen originally thought that the collapse of the ancient road referred to the collapse of the entire ancient road world. Now, he knew that the Lord of Flames was referring to the collapse of the transmission array. He couldn't see through the mysteries of the teleportation array at first glance, let alone repair it. If he used it a few more times, it would probably collapse on the spot. However, this had nothing to do with him for the time being. There were still several hundred years left, and he had to make great progress. Chaos ensued in the depths of the ancient road. A full 800 years passed by in a hurry. No one felt any changes because of this, especially for gods. 800 years was just a fleeting moment. In the depths of the ancient path, a silhouette was floating high up in the sky, breathing continuously. With every breath he took, a great amount of blood qi would be absorbed into his body, strengthening his fleshly body. It was as if he was growing stronger with every passing minute and every second. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. He had finally consolidated his cultivation base. He had finally broken through to the late stage of the undead realm again. This was simply a kind of torture. He spent 100 years to pull his combat power from the early stage of the undead realm back to the middle stage of the undead realm. However, just to raise it from the middle stage to the late stage of the undead realm, it took more than 800 years. In these more than 800 years, it could be said that he had caused chaos in this ancient road. Before he had a breakthrough, he dared to challenge the blood fiends of the late stage of the undead realm. Even in the late stage, he was too lazy to even look at the blood fiends of the middle stage of the undead realm. He was single-minded in finding trouble with the blood fiends of the late stage of the undead realm. These blood fiends were far more tyrannical than the vicious beasts outside. At the same realm, they could completely defeat the so-called geniuses outside. This was also why Yi Shiwen had such a hard time fighting with them. He was not an opponent under ordinary circumstances. It was relatively easy to raise from the early stage of the undead realm to the middle stage of the undead realm. After all, it was restoring the combat power of the original realm. However, it was very difficult to raise from the middle stage of the undead realm to the late stage of the undead realm. That was the power beyond the realm. However, he did not give up and continued to improve. This was a matter of killing two birds with one stone. Constantly improving his strength and constantly improving his combat power. At the same time, this was also honing his foundation. It might not have any effect now, and even every step forward would cost more than the average person. However, once the effect of these hundreds of years of hard work was fully released, there would be an amazing improvement. It would not be a problem to raise a few levels again in a short period of time. Since ancient times, such a situation was not uncommon. Many monsters who walked out of the Kurfürst Road had rushed to the peak of the king-ranked realm in just a few thousand years, which made other people who were struggling to be tongue-tied. This was the benefit of a solid foundation. It was far more than the benefits that appeared on the surface. In these 800 years, he himself could not remember how many blood fiends he had killed, or how many blood fiends he had escaped from the jaws of the blood fiends. Even blood fiends of the same realm, there was a difference in strength. Other people's perception might not be strong, but Yi Shiwen could clearly feel it. This was because his strength had been improving bit by bit. In the beginning, he was chased all over the streets, and then he fought back, and then he went to find more powerful opponents, and then he was chased all over the world. After a certain period of time, he went back to fight back. This had happened over 100 times, which meant that he had improved at least 100 times, and there were obvious improvements. It was just that it was not very obvious when compared to the whole realm. If other people knew about this, they would have been overjoyed. However, he was not satisfied. Too slow, still too slow. He felt that he had not reached the critical point. The point where he could fight against the sage realm purely with the strength of the undead realm. The gap between the divine nations had caused the gap between them to be unbelievably large. Now, he wanted to close this gap. In these 800 years, the improvement of the realm was only one aspect of the improvement of strength. Many of his martial arts had made a qualitative leap. Under the suppression of the cultivation armor, it was very difficult for him to use many of his martial arts, which indirectly increased the difficulty. Now, the speed at which he used many of his martial arts was comparable to when he was not suppressed by the cultivation armor. In particular, the Phoenix regeneration technique had recovered his current healing speed. In these hundreds of years, he did not know how many times he had relied on the Phoenix regeneration technique to save his life. His proficiency had reached a whole new level, and a physical phoenix was directly condensed in his body. It must be known that he only had a few signs of this in the past, but in the past several hundred years, he had actually condensed a physical phoenix. This did not only mean that his Phoenix regeneration technique had improved to a new level, comparable to the ancestors. More importantly, this physical Phoenix was also condensed from infinite healing energy. Even if he was about to die in the next second, this physical Phoenix could save him in an instant. From this situation, it was equivalent to him having an extra life. It was just that it was not easy to condense this physical phoenix. He spent a full 800 years to condense this physical phoenix, and he could only condense this one. There were certain limitations, but even so, he was completely overjoyed. This was equivalent to carrying a life-saving divine medicine with him, which could save him from the edge of death at any time. This was the inspiration he got from the medicine dragon fruit. In these hundreds of years, the medicine dragon fruit had been almost consumed by him in hundreds of bloody battles. Even if he could plant it, the speed of consumption had almost consumed the medicine dragon fruit. However, if he did not have the medicine dragon fruit, he would not have survived many battles. That was because in the past 800 years, he went to challenge the Stone Palace a few more times. However, each time, the opponents were stronger than the last. His strength was increasing, but the people that appeared in the Stone Palace were also stronger. Although they were at the same level as him, they still beat him to a pulp. However, in the end, they were still killed by him. In fact, Yi Shiwen had once encountered the legendary demon master Kuanping. He wasn't the descendant of Kuanping. Instead, he was the supreme master of myriad demons of the ancient heavenly court. He was the demon master Kuanping. That battle was the most tragic one he had ever fought. Demon master Kuanping was too strong, and he had all kinds of means. Many ancient secret techniques that had never been heard of were displayed, and it was very terrifying. If it was someone else, they would have long been tortured to death. Yi Shiwen had challenged Demon Master Kuanping 3 times before he finally defeated him. He had only defeated Demon Master Kuanping after his battle prowess had increased to the late stage of Undead Realm. Even that battle was very thrilling, and he almost turned defeat into victory. Yi Shiwen knew that if it was a Sage Realm challenge, Kuanping would be even stronger. Because the higher the level, many things that could not be used before could be used. The results of the current battle could not be used to measure the battle situation of the Sage Realm. Demon Master Kuanping was the 8th ancient character that he had killed. No one knew who the 9th was because throughout the ages, he was the first person to make it to the 8th level. Chapter 2492. Previously, the strongest person had broken through to the 6th level. However, the 6th level was already very terrifying. Every character had made a huge improvement. It represented that they had gone further in the same realm, and had become even more terrifying. Yi Shiwen didn't know whether he had become invincible in the same realm after defeating the 9th person. After all, it wasn't easy to defeat such a character. Yi Shiwen hadn't thought that he would be able to defeat all 9 of them. Since ancient times, how many amazing geniuses in the Hidden Valley hadn't been able to do this? So, how could he do it? He had confidence in himself, but he wasn't so blind that he wouldn't dare to shout without any assurance. However, in the past few hundred years, he had advanced all the way to the Demon Master Kuanping. Although the whole process was basically tormented to the point of wanting to die, every battle was a kind of enlightenment for him. Every time he returned from challenging the Stone Hall, he would have an increase in his understanding of the realm. He even had a feeling of addiction. Ordinary people couldn't excite him anymore. Only challenging these famous and invincible characters of the ancient times could make his blood boil. They were in the same realm, but their fighting style had broadened Yi Shiwen's horizons. Many of their techniques had given him a sudden flash of insight. He had already reached this stage, and wasn't rigidly bound by technique. However, his worldview had been subverted after he had witnessed the battles of these people. The ingenuity of their techniques had allowed him to achieve twice the results with half the effort. That was because the brilliant God-level martial arts contained countless information about the Great Tao. They were in harmony with the Great Tao. The Great Tao was the greatest truth in the world, and the Great Tao was the road to invincibility. This caused his mindset to undergo a complete transformation. This also prompted him to continuously study various martial arts over the past several hundred years, instead of just focusing on the improvement of his own cultivation. Among them, the ruler's sword technique had been completely deduced by him. He didn't know how much blood energy had been consumed in the process. Fortunately, the blood energy here was abundant. It was more than 10 times that of the outside world. Moreover, the blood beasts that Yi Shiwen had killed would be transformed into blood energy and absorbed by the mysterious space. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to support so many martial arts at the same time. The Sovereign Lord's swordplay deserved to be called one of the most powerful swordplays in the world. As soon as he used it, it seemed as if heaven and earth would submit to it. Although he hadn't reached that level yet, his swordplay's power was still invincible. However, the consumption was also enormous. The power of such a sword technique was needless to say. In addition to the ruler's sword technique, there was also the overturning the sky seal. Originally, he had to spend a lot of effort to use the 3 seals as one. But now it was different. He could casually use the 3 seals as one. It wasn't just because he was stronger. More importantly, his understanding of the overturning the sky seal had reached a whole new realm. When he used the overturning the sky seal, he didn't rely on his magic power to forcibly use it. Instead, he used it skillfully. This was something he had learned when fighting against the invincible ancient people. It was obviously a move of similar power, but the opponent's consumption of magic power was far less than his own. This gave him a lot of inspiration. The deeper he went, the more he realized how terrifying these ancient, invincible figures were. Their innate talents were extremely powerful, and with the addition of hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation, their battle wisdom was not something he could compare to in a short period of time. This was the direction he was currently trying to figure out. Originally, the improvement of his combat power mostly relied on the improvement of his physical body and his own magic power. Now another option was added. When the moves were used to the peak, the improvement of his combat power was also quite amazing. The overturning the sky seal was just one of them. There was also the demon wings. He had been stuck at the wings of light without any change. But he already felt that his speed had increased to the peak. It was undergoing a transformation. This transformation was related to space. Yi Shiwen was also desperately deducing the future changes of the demon wings. Now that Yi Mo was not here, he could only rely on himself to deduce a higher level of the demon wings. This was different from the instant teleportation of the god. The movements of the gods seemed to be very fast, but in fact it required a lot of magic power to travel through space. The more profound the understanding of space, the more powerful it was. But he could feel that if the demon wings transformed from the wings of light to the wings of space, it could become a fixed magical power. Moreover, the power of space was also a very terrifying means of attack. It would be a means of both offense and defense. In short, it could be said to have endless wonderful uses. But the specific situation would only be known after he transformed the wings of light into the wings of space. In addition, the magical power of the thunder attribute had also been improved dramatically. The combination of the flickering thunder step and the wings of light was better in all aspects. The 2 body techniques each had their own advantages. The flickering thunder step was faster, while the wings of light was better for hurrying. Of course, this was only a horizontal comparison. If compared vertically, it was unknown how much stronger it was compared to other body technique. The Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon had been completely transformed by him. It was not like the original one where it could only be used as a big move. It could also be used normally with great power. This was thanks to the thorough study of the Thunder Talisman. He had also thoroughly understood the 3 kinds of martial magical powers recorded in it. He had also practiced a kind of thunder battle armor which had completely integrated with his gilded tyrant form. This was a piece of cake for him. Previously, he had smelted a layer of gilded tyrant body outside his gilded tyrant form. It could be said that his defensive power had greatly increased. Now, his defense had soared to another level after adding the Thunder Battle Armor. Moreover, the Thunder Battle Armor was also capable of both offense and defense. It could counterattack the moment it was attacked. It had almost become an instinct for him. Yi Shiwen continued to study and innovate these moves, causing his combat power to undergo earth-shaking changes in a short period of time. Otherwise, he would not have been able to defeat the legendary demon master Kuanping. Even so, he had finally succeeded after challenging it 3 times. As one of his trump cards, the 10,000 spell roulette had been almost completely refined by him. Although he still could not display the full power of the 10,000 spell roulette, it was enough to be his true trump card. He was even confident that he could seriously injure an expert at the initial stage of the Sage Realm with one attack. Of course, this was only his own calculation. There were many problems with it. It would be terrible if he missed. Therefore, he could not use it as a regular method. He could only keep it as a trump card and use it when necessary. This was his attempt to carry out a quantitative change. If the people of the outside world were to know about this, they would probably be scared to death. This was simply an inhuman attempt and progress. Especially now, he would often immerse himself in the endless thunder liquid. He would absorb the energy of this thunder liquid and tear himself apart. He was using this extreme method to carry out a breakthrough. This was because he knew that he did not have much time. His opponent was too terrifying. He did not have much time to waste. He had also attempted to walk the path of qualitative change. In order to complete the process of qualitative change, the most important thing for an imperishable realm expert was naturally to condense his own divine kingdom. But he hadn't reached that realm yet. Condensing his own divine kingdom was no different from wishful thinking. So how to form a combat power that corresponded to the divine kingdom was also a direction he had been researching. He combined the Sky Spill World and the Ancestral Dragon diagram. These two formed a concept and a domain. The transformation of the domain was the divine kingdom. However, the divine kingdom was more powerful. It could be freely manipulated and modified by the god. This was an ability that gods below the Sage Realm did not have. And the most important thing for Yi Shiwen to form a domain that could contend against the divine nation was the law of his words. He couldn't do it by himself. However, it would be a completely different story if he relied on the Ancestral Dragon's Tao diagram. The Ancestral Dragon in the Ancestral Dragon's Tao diagram could suppress all directions. So, the principles of the divine nation wouldn't be able to penetrate into it. He was once an Emperor-King level expert. So, the principles of a mere divine kingdom couldn't affect the artistic conception of the Ancestral Dragon's lecture. Of course, this was under the condition that Yi Shiwen had the power to contend against the opposite party. The Ancestral Dragon's Tao lecture diagram would have crumbled in an instant if there had been a huge disparity in strength. The world that had evolved from Zai Jiashuang's Sky Spill World had fused with the Ancestral Dragon's Tao lecture diagram. In addition, he had sensed many secrets of the divine nation from Ao Chaozong's body. This was enough for him to construct a formidable domain that could contend against the divine nation. And this was where his confidence lay. However, there was a fatal flaw, and that was that the Ancestral Dragon's Tao preaching diagram was already showing signs of crumbling. After all, this wasn't the original, it was just a copy. Although the materials used were extremely meticulous, the aura of the Ancestral Dragon's Tao preaching diagram was so overbearing that ordinary materials couldn't stop it at all. If this kind of rubbing book was used too many times, it would directly collapse on the spot. Therefore, Yi Shiwen's idea of using the Ancestral Dragon's lecture picture as a regular method was cut off. It could only be used as a trump card at a critical moment, and could not be used frequently. But even so, with this method, Yi Shiwen had the confidence to compete with the masters of the Sage Realm. These 900 years had not been wasted. He floated in the sky. Compared to hundreds of years ago, he had been reborn. He could feel the powerful energy flowing in his body. The bruises left by the battle with the Kuan-Pung had finally been healed. The last battle was too dangerous, and the medicine dragon fruit was swallowed by him at that time. That was how he won the precious opportunity to kill the demon master Kuan-Pung. Everything was worth it. He had gained too much from that battle. There are still 100 years left. I need to improve. In front of him, the heart of the blood realm burst with amazing light and flew into the distance. Chapter 2493. About 100 years ago, the heart of the blood realm in his body would erupt with light from time to time, as if someone was summoning him to go deeper into the ancient road. However, he forcibly suppressed it. At that time, he was only focused on improving his strength. Now it was different. He would leave after 100 years. This period of time seemed long, but in fact, it passed very quickly. He was not willing to let it go just like that, so he planned to explore it. As for the 9th person, he did not have to challenge him. If he was given more time, he would definitely not give up. However, he did not have much time now. He could only choose one of the two, and he was helpless. Thinking of this, he quickly flew in the direction of the heart of the blood realm. The speed of the heart of the blood realm was extremely fast. It broke through space one after another, causing powerful energy fluctuations. It even attracted the attention of many powerful existences in the depths of the ancient road. Yi Shiwen chased closely behind it. He actually had to increase his speed to the extreme to catch up with the speed of the heart of the blood realm. However, he was not afraid of losing it. All these years, he had long refined the heart of the blood realm. There was a trace of connection between him and the heart of the blood realm. No matter how far he ran, he could quickly find it and follow it. He flew for more than half a day. Even Yi Shiwen himself did not know how much space he had passed. He was extremely surprised. The space in the depths of the ancient road was much larger than he had imagined. During this period of time, he should be considered to have only been in the periphery. There were many existences in the depths that he felt were very troublesome and terrifying. Along the way, he also saw many stone halls. They were similar to the ones he saw outside. They should be the same, just that they were prepared for people of different levels of strength. With his strength, he could only wander in the periphery. If he wanted to enter the depths, only a king-ranked expert would have the strength and possibility. Along the way, he did not dare to stop at the slightest. He constantly passed through the void. There were too many powerful existences in the ancient road. There were even some who were alarmed by his passing aura and directly attacked him. Fortunately, he did not stop and left very quickly. Even some extremely terrifying existences could not stop him halfway. Finally, the heart of the blood realm came to a stop in a valley. This valley was covered in layers of blood mist. Within a radius of 10,000 miles, there were actually no powerful existences. This made him feel a little strange. The heart of the blood realm went straight in. He didn't stop and immediately followed it in. There was nothing in the valley, only a sea of fire. Balls of flames were burning fiercely, but they weren't ordinary flames. Instead, they were blood-red flames. This kind of flame didn't seem to be very hot, it only gave off a cold feeling. However, after Yi Shiwen opened the eyes of redemption, he clearly discovered that there were piles of ashes in the sea of fire. They were of various shapes and sizes, but it wasn't difficult to determine that they were all powerful existences that had died inside. Damn, just how many powerful existences have died in there? Yi Shiwen was shocked and couldn't help but say. These ashes were still exuding powerful vibrations. It was enough to prove that they were powerful beings when they were alive. They were probably invincible experts above the imperishable realm. This kind of flame seemed inconspicuous and a little strange. However, it could even burn imperishable realm gods and even more powerful gods alive. It was enough to show how terrifying it was. In the depths of this sea of fire, an incomparably large blood stone was bobbing up and down. In the center of the bloodstone there was a missing piece. Wasn't its shape exactly the same as the heart of the blood realm? Is the heart of the blood realm really related to the blood prison? However, before Yi Shiwen could react, the heart of the blood realm instantly jumped out and merged into the center of this huge bloodstone. After a while, there was no trace of the fusion, as if it had never been separated. Yi Shiwen had countless questions in his mind. Why did the heart of the blood realm, which obviously came from here, appear in ancient times? More importantly, if only one of those powerful beings had died in there, it could be explained that he had accidentally barged in and was burned to death. However, if so many of them had died in there, it was really inexcusable. What was the secret behind it? No one knew at all. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen felt that the heart of the blood realm was still calling him to enter it. He was a little hesitant. This kind of flame was too terrifying. It had burned countless powerful existences to death. However, the energy within the crimson stone was boundless. He didn't know how many years it had existed for, and the energy accumulated within it was incomparably vast. If he could absorb it, his cultivation would probably improve in a short period of time, and he would truly reach a realm that no one had ever reached before or since. This was a kind of gamble. If he gambled correctly, he would advance by leaps and bounds. However, if he lost, he was afraid that he would be like these people. Thinking of this, he suddenly understood why there were so many ashes here. The reason why those powerhouses broke into this place was probably because of the blood stone that was dozens of square meters in size. After a long silence, the call of the heart of the blood realm in his heart became stronger and stronger. Suddenly, he made a decision. Go all out. Wealth comes from danger. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath. Bursts of golden light flickered on his body, illuminating him as if he was cast in gold. On the surface of his body, a layer of lightning light flickered. At the same time, the demon wings behind him directly spread out. The originally dazzling wings of light began to faintly feel transparent. This was a sign that he was about to evolve into the wings of space. He prepared everything. If something went wrong, he would immediately spread the wings of light and escape. After he was fully prepared, he immediately rushed in. Crash! Almost in an instant, the seemingly calm sea of fire suddenly burst into countless flames, swallowing him alive. It hurts. Even with Yi Shiwen's willpower, he screamed wildly and grimaced in pain from the burning. The thunderbolt battle armor on his body disintegrated instantly. Could not withstand this kind of flame at all. It directly burned his tyrant form. Pieces of pitch-black skin fell off his body. He had been burned to the point that his skin was peeling off. His flesh and blood were almost evaporating. However, he was not instantly burned to ashes. Instead, he constantly operated observing person scripture and phoenix regeneration technique to repair his burnt body. The coverage of these flames was omnidirectional and endless. Yi Shiwen had tried to exercise his tyrant form in various harsh situations. There was no doubt that this was an unprecedentedly harsh environment. It was even worse than the worst environment he had imagined before. At this time, he finally deeply understood why so many powerful people died here. These flames directly burned people's flesh and blood. It was difficult not to die. The wings of light behind him spread out instantly. It was constantly burned and constantly replenished. He was almost unable to hold on anymore. He had to give up. Although the energy contained in the blood stone was tempting, he needed to be alive to enjoy it. At this time, a group of blood-colored energy fell from the sky and directly poured into Yi Shiwen's body. It instantly replenished the consumption of his body. What was more amazing was that this group of blood-colored energy directly integrated into his body. It was actually reshaping his body. It was becoming stronger little by little. On one hand, this blood-colored flame was constantly burning his flesh and blood. On the other hand, this blood-colored energy was constantly reshaping his body. Every time his fleshly body was remolded, his fleshly body would become a little stronger. Yi Shiwen continued to scream and grit his teeth. However, the devil's wings behind him were directly retracted. He would not let go of such an opportunity. Although it was extremely painful, every minute and second was like suffering in the 18th level of hell. Every minute and second was as long as a century. However, he still gritted his teeth and endured. He was very clear that as long as he could hold on, the benefits he could obtain would be unlimited. Bathing in the fire to refine his body, he was now simply using his body as a sacrificial offering to refine his body like a divine tool. Hold on, I must hold on. Yi Shiwen was very clear about the principle of nothing ventured, nothing gained. If there was no such suffering, how could he be above all living beings and truly be on par with those monstrous geniuses? Time passed, and several decades passed in a flash. Yi Shiwen was constantly suffering, but his body was also growing at an astonishing speed. Originally, he had to constantly rely on the support of the blood-red energy in order to survive in the flames and not be burned alive. But now, he had to rely on the support of the blood-red energy to barely survive the flames. But now, he could only rely on his body to survive in this blood-colored flame. Of course, he would still be burned to the point that he would grimace in pain. However, this situation had fundamentally improved compared to decades ago. As for the remaining energy that had not been squandered, he stored it in the depths of his body. His strength was increasing every minute and second. His skills were also constantly improving. These decades of tempering had also made his will incomparably firm. This blood-colored energy seemed to be able to burn the spirit. It tempered his spirit to become incomparably firm. Even if he did not have the Mingxin ancient tree, he would not be afraid of those spirit-type magic treasures. The harvest was incomparably huge. Bang! Just when Yi Shiwen's spirit was completely immersed in it, he did not know whether it was day or night. The original huge bloodstone completely collapsed in an instant. The energy contained in it was also completely absorbed by Yi Shiwen in the past decade. Now, it finally could not hold on and collapsed on the spot. Yi Shiwen also rose from the flames. It was as if he had completed a rebirth from the fire. Under his feet were the ashes of his burned body. These ashes did not kill him, but instead made him stronger. Chapter 2494. The collapse of the bloodstone also woke him up completely. He stood up from the flames and felt that there was no part of his body that did not have a powerful force. Every move he made contained a powerful force that could shoot down stars. He looked at the ashes around him. In the distance, there were also the ashes of other powerful almighties. He could not help but rejoice in his heart. Fortunately, he had the help of the Blood Realm Heart. Otherwise, the Blood Stone would not have inexplicably poured energy into his body. Without the support of the Blood Stone's energy, he would have been burned alive by the blood-colored flames, let alone the blood fire real body. That was simply impossible. He chose to take the risk, and it turned out that he did not make the wrong choice. The harvest was great. His physical body had improved to another level. He could even feel that he might be able to take a blow from a high-grade divine tool with his bare hands. Compared to the previous level, it could be said that he had climbed to a higher level. Although it had not climbed to the peak, it was already extremely rare for him. Most of the blood-colored energy had been used to sacrifice his physical body over the years, but there was still a large part left, all contained in his physical body. As long as he mobilized it, he might be able to break through to another realm. It was not a breakthrough in combat power, but the combat power of his real body had improved to the late stage of the undead realm. In that case, after completely releasing the cultivation disguise, it was simply unimaginable to what extent his strength would improve. "Can I blow up the divine nation with one punch?" Yi Shiwen grinned. The blood-colored flames around him were still burning, and the power was still terrifying, but it could not pose a fatal threat to him. It could be said that he had spent most of his life on this ancient road for 1,000 years. What did it mean to cultivate in the mountains without 60 years? This was exactly what it meant to cultivate in the mountains without 60 years. However, he forcibly suppressed the breakthrough. Now was not the time to break through. He still had to defeat the ninth person. Otherwise, once he broke through to the late stage of undead realm, he might not even be able to defeat the first 4 symbols true monarch in the same realm, let alone defeating the ninth person. Being a master in the same realm required too much accumulation, so he had to defeat the ninth person in the middle stage of the undead realm. He did not have another 1,000 years to waste. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel a little excited. Even with his rock-solid will, his heart was still extremely excited. This was something that had never happened before, and would never happen again. No one had ever been able to defeat 9 great cultivators in a row. No one had ever been able to do this. However, just as Yi Shiwen was about to leave, he only saw a blood-red figure sitting cross-legged in the flames. No matter how the blood-red flames burned, the figure didn't move in the slightest. His mouth moved as if he was reciting a scripture. And the most important thing was that he could actually hear the scripture. What's going on? I clearly didn't see it before. Could it be the scripture inside the bloodstone? Yi Shiwen was a little stunned. He didn't need to open the eyes of redemption to see that this bloody figure was not a living creature, but a manifestation of scripture. This was related to the creator of the scripture. If it was a scripture left behind by the ancestral dragon, it could even evolve into a true dragon. However, it was impossible that he had not discovered this blood-colored voice in the past few decades. There was only one possibility, and that was that the bloodstones had fallen after breaking apart. The voice of the bloody figure reciting the scripture grew louder and louder. At first, it was just a little, but now it was getting louder and louder, as if it was going to fill the world all of a sudden. Yi Shiwen opened the eyes of redemption, and the power of redemption broke through the blood-red flames. He clearly saw an ancient scripture floating in the middle of the body of the bloody figure, exuding a kind of amazing light. The aura of the Great Way permeated on it, and the talismans turned into a waterfall that constantly rotated and danced in the sky. It was not an ordinary scripture at first glance. But how could an ordinary scripture survive in this kind of blood-red flame? Yi Shiwen was overjoyed. This ancient scripture must have recorded an extraordinary magical power or an earth-shattering martial technique. This was undoubtedly a great era. He hurriedly leaped up and slapped the bloody figure away, revealing the page of scripture within. He grabbed this page of scripture in his hand, and the text on this page of scripture suddenly turned into Tao sounds, and suddenly instilled into Yi Shiwen's mind. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen had been possessed by a demon. He suddenly paused, and his eyes began to become somewhat absent-minded. The page of sutra in his hand burst out with an astonishing radiance, and on the spot, it turned into a mass of blood-red light and disappeared above the horizon. After this page of scripture disappeared, the blood-red flame that covered the entire valley also dissipated little by little, as if it had never appeared. After a long time, Yi Shiwen finally woke up. The things recorded on the page of scripture appeared in front of his eyes. At that moment there were too many things recorded on it, including many comprehension of the Great Way and magical power technique. Yi Shiwen knew that he must have missed a big opportunity. If he had this page of ancient scripture in his hand, the benefits he could obtain were simply unimaginable. At that moment there was too much information pouring in, and he couldn't grasp it all. In the end, he only grasped a magical power called the Blood God. This was an extremely overbearing martial technique that could condense another real body, and it was said that as long as the Blood God was not destroyed, the real body would not die. Condensing the Blood God was equivalent to having an indestructible body. Even if he was killed on the spot, as long as the Blood God was still there, he could directly condense it on the spot. Of course, condensing it would certainly not come without a price, just like how an Eternal Realm expert would have to pay a great price to reshape his body. Even so, it was already shocking enough. In this case, no one would be able to kill him unless he and the Blood God were killed together. Otherwise, they would not be able to kill him. At the end of this martial technique, it was said that there would be thousands of incarnations, and they would be indestructible. Moreover, the Blood God could also promote cultivation. Cultivating together was equivalent to cultivating oneself together. When the Blood God returned to the original body, all the cultivation would also return to the original body. Once the number of Blood God increased, his cultivation speed would be unimaginable. There was no doubt that if this martial technique was made public, it would cause countless people to fight over it. The most unfortunate thing was that he only had a fragment of this magical power. The time was too short, and he didn't have enough time to grasp too much. It couldn't be as heaven-defying as the complete version, but it was still very powerful. It took a lot of energy for Blood God to condense one. Luckily, he had absorbed a lot of energy from the Bloodstone, so it was enough for him to condense one. However, he still needed to comprehend all of this. In short, Yi Shiwen had gained a lot from these decades of cultivation. Yi Shiwen only waved his fist lightly, and the space in front of him suddenly shattered into a large piece. Just his physical body alone was comparable to a high-grade divine tool, and it was enough to push his combat power back to the peak of the Eternal Realm. If he had to fight Demon Master Kuan Peng from 100 years ago, it wouldn't be so difficult. It could basically be said that he would be crushed. It's time to go out, but before I go out, I have to try the 9th level. It's rumored that no one has ever succeeded. Yi Shiwen said faintly, his expression incomparably confident. His every movement was filled with boundless power that flowed out from his body. This powerful power gave him absolute confidence. His figure slowly disappeared into the void, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared hundreds of thousands of miles away. He rushed all the way to the periphery of the ancient road, alarming many powerhouses along the way, but none could catch up with Yi Shiwen's current speed. He came all the way to the stone hall. The stone hall was the same as when he came hundreds of years ago. He walked all the way to the teleportation array. The moment he entered, the statue suddenly opened its eyes, and a somewhat complicated expression appeared on its face. Then, it disappeared without a trace and returned to its original state. Yi Shiwen entered this space again, as if it had been like this for countless years, and there wouldn't be the slightest change. Up in the sky, a formless pressure spread down. It was a magnificent scene. Endless clouds curled up, and even the wind and thunder were trembling. A figure slowly emerged from the void. Yi Shiwen hadn't been able to see it clearly in the past. However, he was able to see it clearly this time. It wasn't a living creature. It was a drop of blood essence that had been formed under the influence of the rules. There was the will of a sage integrated into it. But the moment he saw this figure, even he was shocked. Demon King. He didn't expect the last person to be the Demon King. He still couldn't forget the scene on the Demon Island. That was a supreme powerhouse that had never been forgotten since ancient times. He had single-handedly created the ancient heavenly court and became one of the most powerful forces in history. Yi Wudi had only received his influence and could become the leader of one of the most powerful forces in the world. No one dared to underestimate him. It was simply unimaginable how powerful the ancient heavenly court was at its peak. And this time, His opponent was actually the Demon King. How terrifying would a Demon King of the same level be? It would probably be difficult to meet a worthy opponent in the world. Yi Shiwen respected such a powerful senior, even if he was of a different race. All the memories that had been sealed in his heart for a long time suddenly resurfaced. He felt a chill run down his spine, as if a cold current had risen from the soles of his feet to his head. What kind of person was the Demon King? He had been fighting against people even after his death. At that time, he was still too far away from understanding the situation. Now, he seemed to vaguely guess that someone was targeting the Demon King, or even the Emperor. He vaguely felt that he seemed to be involved in one of the most terrifying secrets in history. But at this time, there was no time for him to think too much. The Demon King's aura exploded. Chapter 2495. Around the Demon Sovereign, countless golden lotuses automatically condensed and fell from the sky. These phenomena, which would normally only appear during Tao validation, were now appearing around the Demon Sovereign's body. Around his body, countless sword rays began to condense, and countless sword rays began to shuttle in the void, instantly turning into a kingdom of sword Tao. If one looked closely, they would find that these sword rays were all evolved from sword Tao talismans. They were very terrifying, and had invincible power. His breathing was also very terrifying, and his qi and blood were like pillars, and there was a faint sound of raging waves. These were all signs of an extremely profound cultivation, and it was a sign that his physical cultivation had reached an extreme. This was only formed by a drop of blood essence, and if the real body descended, it was unknown how terrifying it would be. Clang! With a loud clang, the sword ray condensed in the void, and instantly slashed down. It was a kind of supreme power, and it was a completely different sword technique from the Dominator's sword intent, but it was not weak. Bang! Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch, and his physical body collided with the sword ray fiercely. The sound of the collision was almost ear-shattering, and the world was roaring, resonating with the world. The sword ray left a white mark on Yi Shiwen's fist. The power of the sword ray was terrifying, and it contained the power to cut through the stars. If not for the fact that his physical cultivation was a level higher, he would not have dared to take this attack with his bare hands. This was already beyond the limit. Yi Shiwen instantly launched a counterattack. He didn't show any mercy in the face of such an invincible character. He roared loudly, and the sound waves rushed across the world. The stars in the sky seemed to turn into powder. The sun, the moon, and the stars exploded one after another under his attack. It was like an ancient god-king was fighting. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and directly blasted out a huge world, which turned into a world of humanity, to suppress the Demon Sovereign. There was an uncontrollable excitement on his face. It was not always an opportunity to fight with such an expert. Bang! With a terrifying sound of collision, Yi Shiwen's fist was blocked by the Demon Sovereign's sword. In an instant, the sword condensed from sword Tao talismans in his hand was bombarded by Yi Shiwen's attack, and dense cracks appeared on it. However, the Demon Emperor didn't seem to mind. His face was eternally calm, as if this kind of attack couldn't affect him at all. His other hand instantly grabbed an amazing sword light and counterattacked Yi Shiwen on the spot. It was launched almost at the same time as Yi Shiwen's counterattack. It was extremely fast. It was truly terrifying. When the sword slashed down, it was as if the sky had collapsed and smashed down. It was as if the world had entered doomsday mode with a single slash. The endless natural laws instantly manifested, turning into an eternal radiance. It was extremely terrifying. Bang! The sword in tension chopped down on Yi Shiwen's body. It chopped down on his Thunderbolt battle clothes. Cracks appeared on his Thunderbolt battle clothes. However, it still couldn't injure his gilded tyrant form. Even so, The might of this sword had already made him have a whole new level of respect for it. A few decades ago, the demon sovereign's means were enough to kill him. She was even more powerful than the demon master Kuan Pung. But now, it was unable to pose a fundamental threat to him. Senior Demon Emperor, you're really strong. However, you've only reached one kind of limit. I've surpassed this limit. Yi Shiwen looked at the Demon Emperor. The aura of his body was actually rising steadily. In an instant, it had climbed to the original limit and was still breaking through. The cultivation vest that had imprisoned his cultivation was instantly released, allowing his cultivation to climb to an extremely terrifying level. Wherever his gaze passed, the world would collapse, the sun and the moon would lose their luster, and the stars would explode. In order to show my respect to you, I will erupt with my strongest strength and defeat you. This time, he really didn't hold back and didn't intend to delay. There wasn't much time now. Therefore, it wasn't time to temper himself. Instead, he had to defeat the Demon Emperor and establish a will that wouldn't be worn down by 10,000 tribulations. The realm that Yi Shiwen erupted had even shocked the opposite Demon Emperor. Obviously, he didn't expect that someone could actually erupt with such a realm at this level. Although it wasn't his main body, the majesty of an emperor couldn't be blasphemed. Yi Shiwen could feel that his strength had already climbed to the peak. In fact, he would soon be unable to suppress his breakthrough. His accumulation was too deep. He had been lingering in this realm for thousands of years. It might seem very ordinary to others, but he had never stayed in the same realm for such a long time. The accumulation of these realms would turn into a flood at this time and break through the barrier of the realm. Therefore, there wasn't much time left for him. Clang! The Demon Emperor didn't take advantage of Yi Shiwen's release of cultivation to attack. As an emperor, he had this kind of demeanor and confidence. At this time, he finally brandished his sword. It condensed into an ancient sword. It was just an ordinary sword, but it had an unpredictable power. Bang! This sword was easily blocked by Yi Shiwen. The terrifying power collided. The power of both sides was concentrated on this ancient sword. The ancient sword condensed from sword talisman collapsed on the spot. Although the divine weapon condensed from martial arts talisman was sometimes more tyrannical than the real divine weapon, and its power was infinite in the hands of a real master. However, if the power exceeded the limit of the divine weapon, it would still collapse on the spot. Bang! What? The remaining power directly bombarded the body of the Demon Emperor. The shock caused him to retreat a few steps and spit out a big mouthful of blood. Again, the Demon Emperor finally opened his mouth. Perhaps he felt that Yi Shiwen was worthy of him opening his mouth. A sword condensed in his hand again. He took the initiative to attack. The sword light swept across and turned into a huge ancient bell in the sky. It pressed down towards Yi Shiwen. The aura of a supreme emperor erupted instantly. This bell's shadow could destroy the world. Compared to the previous time, the Demon Emperor showed some of his strength this time. This sword technique was indeed a supreme sword technique. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't weak either. If it was before, both sides might have to fight a bitter battle. But now, he had completely gained the upper hand. There was no need for this. Animal Dao. He blasted another punch. The fist energy seemed to transform into endless ferocious beasts and divine beasts. They rushed towards the heaven and earth and collided with the ancient bell. Rumble! This attack extinguished the sun and moon, shattered the galaxy, and collapsed the heaven and earth. The ancient bell that the Demon Emperor had slashed out shattered again. After all, Yi Shiwen wouldn't be a match for the Demon Emperor if he didn't have the Eastern Emperor bell. Boom! Yi Shiwen instantly took a step forward and attacked first. In an instant, he used the flickering thunder step. He instantly rushed in front of the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor's expression didn't change. His body instantly transformed into endless God rule chains. Those bell waves transformed into God rule chains and instantly locked onto Yi Shiwen. The thunder law erupted from Yi Shiwen's body and condensed into an infinite thunder dragon that contended against the God rule chains. Meanwhile, he got rid of all the distractions and rushed to the front of the Demon Emperor instantly. Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. His palm pressed directly on the Demon Emperor's chest. In an instant, endless energy exploded and formed a terrifying shock wave that blasted out. Boom! Yi Shiwen's Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon directly opened a big hole in the Demon Emperor's chest. Without the suppression of the cultivation armor, Yi Shiwen's spiritual power was vigorous to a terrifying level. This allowed him to use the Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon unscrupulously. In fact, the terrifying power penetrated too quickly. The Demon Emperor didn't even have time to fly out. Again, the Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon condensed in Yi Shiwen's hand again. The Demon Emperor's face was cold. He didn't seem to be moved at all. The sword light instantly condensed and pierced into Yi Shiwen's body. Boom! 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 This ancient sword shattered inch by inch on Yi Shiwen's body. It couldn't do anything to him. It could only shatter on the spot. His current physical body was already tyrannical and terrifying. The wounds on the Demon Emperor's body needed to be reconstructed. This was actually easier than doing it with his own body. It's too late. This is the last hurdle. Let me see what kind of secrets are hidden behind this last hurdle. Yi Shiwen roared. The Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon in his hand instantly blasted out. The frightening energy shock wave completely submerged the Demon Emperor, completely submerging him in this frightening fluctuation. Boom! The Demon Emperor's physical body completely shattered in an instant. It completely collapsed under this terrifying power. Yi Shiwen had already practiced the Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon to the extent that he could control it at will. He could instantly control its power. Compared to thousands of years ago, it was on a completely different level. It only took a moment for it to collapse. The endless smoke and dust dispersed. This battle was over. Even the Demon Emperor couldn't condense again after being bombarded by such a terrifying power. Yi Shiwen's power slowly converged. His aura continued to weaken. The cultivation armor in his body was reactivated. He slightly breathed a sigh of relief. This battle was a pity. If he had taken off the cultivation armor from the beginning, the Demon Emperor might have been stronger. However, now was not the time to waste time on training. In the past 1,000 years, this was the only time he had completely unleashed his strength. Without the cultivation armor, that feeling was simply reborn. However, he had even more questions in his heart. Just who was it that set up such a test here? 9 people, any one of them was an existence that could dominate the world, and the last one was the Demon Emperor, an existence that could shock the heavens and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. In any case, they were definitely not ordinary people. However, when he was about to leave and break through, the surrounding world suddenly collapsed and turned into an endless light source. In front of him, a huge altar suddenly appeared. Chapter 2496. The entire altar was square-shaped. It was carved out of a huge blood-red stone. It was floating in the void, motionless. Countless blood-red chains were shuttling in the void above the altar. They were locking an ancient sword above the altar. The shape was simple and unadorned. There were many patterns on it. Each pattern was like a blood groove. It was full of strange but vast aura. There were only 2 ancient Taoist characters engraved on the sword hilt of Ichi. This was an extremely ancient character. Yi Shiwen had never seen it before. However, he naturally understood the meaning of these 2 characters when he probed it with his divine sense. In ancient times, many Taoist characters had strange shape. One could only rely on oneself to comprehend them. The 2 characters of Ichi revealed a vast and boundless feeling. In ancient legends, there was a legend of the Avicii Hell in the world of the dead. It meant eternal suffering. It was the lowest of all the hells. People who committed crimes during their lifetime would enter the Avicii Hell to suffer after death. Of course, having cultivated to his level, he naturally understood that many myths and legends might have some basis, but even more were absurd and uninhibited. After a living being died, their souls directly dissolved on the spot could be found everywhere. They didn't enter the legendary world of the dead, the eternal underworld, not to mention the so-called 18 layers of hell. He had never seen it before. However, the legend of the 18 layers of hell had been circulated in various worlds. Perhaps it wasn't that simple. However, it involved the world of the dead after death. It was also a taboo among the gods. Just from the two characters of Avicii, one could feel a vast and ancient aura. This sword dared to use the legendary hell as its name. It was naturally extraordinary. It was just that these chains had locked the sword in place. These chains seemed to be preventing the birth of this ancient sword. Avicii sword. Yi Shiwen softly read the ancient pronunciation of these three characters. The body of the ancient sword suddenly began to tremble violently. It bloomed with dazzling light as if it was announcing something. "This altar is behind the defeat of 9 people?" Yi Shiwen murmured. He could feel that the Avicii sword was exuding an amazing killing intention. All magic tools, especially divine tools that had slain gods, carried an indescribable killing intent. However, such a shocking killing intent was unprecedented. This was because the sword was bound by the blood-colored chain. Otherwise, if it were to be revealed, its killing intent would be so shocking that an ordinary person would probably become an idiot in an instant. Yi Shiwen also felt a sense of extreme danger in his heart. It was his sixth sense. It meant that he wouldn't be any better if he was in Yi Shiwen's shoes. This made him feel very conflicted. He could feel the power of the sword of Avicii. It was very strong, but the consequences were not something he could bear for the time being. The corner of his mouth twitched as he said, "Is this the reward for defeating 9 people? It's just that the reward itself is also a kind of reward, right? If you recklessly go forward, you'll instantly become an idiot." However, it was very obvious that the entire altar seemed to be under the control of some kind of power, and collapsed in an instant. Countless chains collapsed along with the altar, and the Avicii sword burst into an astonishing light in the sky. It seemed as if it had finally come into being, and countless sword lights swept out like a gale and a wave. Walla lala! The corners of Yi Shiwen's clothes were fluttering in the wind of the Avicii sword. A kind of boundless hostility swept out from the Avicii sword, and suddenly rushed into Yi Shiwen's mind. In his eyes, the surroundings instantly turned into a gray hell, and boundless darkness shrouded this world. It was an endless wilderness as far as the eye could see. However, the truly terrifying thing was that the wilderness wasn't covered with weeds, but with human hands. It seemed as if countless people were buried in a hiding place. Mournful screams came from the side of his ears. It seemed as if something wanted to crawl out of this land. Those were all sinners, sinners who would forever sink in the Avicii hell. They would suffer the most painful torture. Suddenly, there was a flash in front of his eyes, and it instantly turned into a mountain of knives. Shining blades fell upside down on the endless mountain ridges, and each blade had a soul pierced on it, and they were constantly screaming as they hung on it. Before Yi Shiwen could see more, this mountain of knives instantly turned into a sea of fire. Countless souls were struggling in it, and they were being burned by the raging fire. They screamed endlessly, and they struggled to crawl towards Yi Shiwen. "Sinner, quickly accept your punishment!" A loud shout came from the void, and it directly shook the internal organs of Yi Shiwen. An indescribable pressure crushed down, and it wanted to make Yi Shiwen kneel on the spot. In the void, there was a faint aura of 6 paths of reincarnation spreading, and a huge wheel was condensing, and it wanted to suck him into the 6 paths of reincarnation and bring him to endless reincarnation. I have already proven my Tao and become a god. I have transcended the world, jumped out of the 3 realms, and am no longer in the 5 elements. Who do you think you are, and you dare to make me admit my guilt and accept my punishment? Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes, and there was endless light flashing in his eyes. Just a mere resentment and you dare to show off in front of me? You are really courting death. Break for me. Yi Shiwen opened the eyes of redemption, and instantly saw through it. There was no Avicii hell, and there was no mountain of knives or sea of fire. They were all formed by a resentment that rushed into his mind. Although he didn't have the enlightening mind ancient tree to suppress his mind, it was impossible to confuse him with just a trace of evil chi and resentment. He blasted out a punch, and the resentment were dispersed on the spot. Everything in front of him became clear, but more resentment rushed in, and it wanted to impact him into an idiot. On his body, the power of thunder instantly turned into a battle armor, and protected him in it. This was the strongest and most positive lightning in the world, and it specialized in restraining the evil power of the Yin. It could barely resist the increasingly terrifying resentment. He looked at the void, and in the void the Avicii sword was constantly bursting out a kind of amazing sword light, and it blasted into the void. It seemed to be fighting against something, and it wanted to break the restraint of this space. The crack in the space was getting bigger, and it seemed that the Avicii sword was really going to escape. It wanted to force him to make a choice. I'm going all out. I can't let the Avicii sword escape. Yi Shiwen immediately roared, and his hands instantly turned into boundless chains, and he grabbed the Avicii sword. Bang! The Avicii sword was just about to escape, but it was caught by Yi Shiwen's hand. In an instant, the boundless murderous aura rushed out, and it almost broke his mind. Compared to the resentment at this time, the bit of resentment and murderous aura just now was simply not worth mentioning. This time was the real horror. Although the mysterious space in his body suddenly erupted in a short time, and absorbed most of the resentment and murderous aura, it still couldn't resolve the endless murderous aura, and it directly rushed into his brain. His eyes instantly turned red, and he only felt that there was endless murderous aura all over his body that needed to be resolved. This murderous aura directly invaded his blood vessels, and made his blood boil instantly. He barely found a bit of clarity, and took out the Tianyuan mirror, and directly absorbed the Avicii sword into it. Both sides directly collided, and an astonishing light burst out. The Avicii sword could actually resist the absorption of the Tianyuan mirror, and it seemed that it had a powerful potential that had yet to burst out. However, in the end, it was still suppressed by Yi Shiwen, and absorbed into the Tianyuan mirror. Although the Avicii sword was terrifying, it couldn't break the space of the Tianyuan mirror. Both sides continued to fight, and countless god rule chains instantly formed, and entangled the Avicii sword, firmly binding him. The murderous aura in Yi Shiwen's mind gradually dissipated, and his eyes regained their clarity. The Avicii sword's murderous aura almost made him collapse, not to mention if it really erupted with power, perhaps no one could resist it. However, in order to suppress the Avicii sword, the Tianyuan mirror could be considered as scrapped. Unless he could refine the Avicii sword later, otherwise, it would be very difficult to use the Tianyuan mirror again. It was almost like losing an arm. However, he didn't regret it. Although there was no way to use the Tianyuan mirror for the time being, it was undoubtedly a great harvest for him if he could refine the Avicii sword, and he would also have one more trump card in his hand. Of course, the premise was that he could withstand the endless terrifying murderous aura of the Avicii sword. It could be said that there were advantages and disadvantages. However, at this time, the spreading imposing aura on his body didn't converge as he regained his clarity. Instead, it continued to spread out. Just a moment ago, He was unable to control his cultivation after being attacked by the murderous aura. He didn't control it again. Anyway, he had decided to make a breakthrough. Boom! Even the cultivation vest on his body was no longer deliberately suppressed. It relaxed, and a huge amount of power was released. It instantly swept out in a frenzy, and the energy directly shattered the void. The power continued to circulate in his body, and crazily attacked the barrier of the late stage of undead realm. This realm barrier couldn't be said to be not strong enough. Originally, Yi Shiwen couldn't break through it. However, the tempering of the past thousands of years had made his strength rise to an unimaginable level during this period of time. It was originally difficult to break through the realm barrier. At this time, it simply couldn't stop Yi Shiwen. It collapsed inch by inch, and Yi Shiwen's strength also continued to rise along with the continuous collapse of the realm barrier. It seemed that his strength was improving every minute and every second, and he was breaking through the original realm. Rumble! His whole body seemed to explode, and the energy crazily swept out. He didn't know how much time had passed before he completely opened his eyes. The last trace of the realm barrier on his body had also completely disappeared. Finally rushed into the late stage of undead realm. A total of 1,000 years, it's really a long time. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly, clenched his fists, and felt the powerful and terrifying power erupting in his body. It surpassed all the perception he could perceive in the past. Even if it's a real divine kingdom, I can still smash it with one punch. Kurfürst Road, here I come. His figure flashed, and he had already disappeared. Chapter 2497. In the depths of the void of the universe, a vast ancient road slowly unveiled its mysterious veil. The Kurfürst Road, which only appeared once every 100,000 years, was finally reopened. For many people, this was of extraordinary significance. This was a road to choose a sovereign emperor. It was also the only place in the universe in recent times where one had a clear chance to enter the sovereign emperor realm. The vastness of the Kurfürst Road attracted countless people. Not only those who had once shaken the world and swept across the Kurfürst Road, but even other people wanted to enter the Kurfürst Road. Because although they were not qualified to compete for that wisp of opportunity, there were many other opportunities in the Kurfürst Road. Of course, most importantly, no one could say who would get the opportunity in the end. A kind of bell rang throughout the universe, announcing the opening of the Kurfürst Road. This road would really be opened in this void for 1,000 years. This was the time and opportunity for people to search for the legendary opportunities related to sovereign emperors. The calm peace heaven, one of the lower heaven of the Kurfürst Road's 33 heavens. At this time, countless people gathered, all for the Kurfürst Road that only appeared once every 100,000 years. Many old antiques who had been sleeping for many years also woke up in the sound of the bell and came. For a moment, it seemed that all the gods in the world had gathered here. This was a vast, boundless, uninhabited area. No one knew who established it, only that it was called the Calm Peace Heaven. In the Kurfürst Road, there were a total of 33 such small worlds, known as the 33 heavens, which were further divided into the upper, middle, and lower heavens. The Calm Peace Heaven was one of the lower heavens. Because it was only a lower heaven, it was undoubtedly much safer than the middle and upper heavens, so it was also the place that countless people chose to stay. However, although it was a lower heaven, there were many natural treasures and miracles in the Calm Peace Heaven that were hard to find in the outside world. This was also the graveyard that most people came to. They did not have the strength to fight in the middle and upper heavens, but at least they had no problem in the lower heavens. When Yi Shiwen set foot on the Calm Peace Heaven, the first world of the Kurfürst Road, it had already been decades since the Kurfürst Road opened. He was still too late, unable to catch up to the first wave of excitement. At this time, the 33 heavens were a boiling cauldron of voices. There hadn't been a single person for 100,000 years, but now it was like a completely different world had changed. He came to an ancient city. This city was covered with weathered marks of time, but it was forcibly fixed by a formation. Even though millions of years had passed, it still hadn't collapsed. This was also a place where many foreign gods chose to settle down. There were many cities like this in the calm peace heaven, and they had all been built over many generations. The Hidden Valley also had such a city as a place for the sect members to stay. However, the cities built by the regal sect were all in the upper heavens. There was no such city in the calm peace heaven, which was a lower heaven. However, these cities didn't dare to refuse entry to members of the regal sect. In reality, they were half open. After entering the city, he could almost feel tyrannical divine will sweeping everywhere. Many ancient and powerful gods were walking around in the city. Even many sects and legacies that were rarely seen could be seen. It could be said that this was also a grand event that happened every 100,000 years. A pure newcomer like him was naturally very curious about everything. After entering a little further into the city, he could hear the voices of people selling their wares. An ancient divine artifact, a divine artifact used by the ancient gods. It's much stronger than other divine artifacts. Now it's only 10 million divine root. Just 10 million divine roots, and this ancient divine artifact is yours. The so-called ancient god artifact was the artifact used by the ancient gods in the distant past. Many of those gods were born with the will of the heavenly way, so their strength was much stronger than the gods of the same realm. Many of them were born with the will of the heavenly way, so they were much stronger than the gods of the same realm. Many of them were born with companion divine artifact. These companion divine artifacts weren't acquired, but formed naturally. Once something was related to the innate, its value would undoubtedly increase by many times. Moreover, it was a congenital divine artifact. Therefore, these ancient divine artifacts could often be sold at a high price. Someone was shouting in his ear. He turned his head and looked. He silently activated the Eye of Redemption and immediately saw through the so-called ancient divine artifact. It was simply an ordinary low-grade divine artifact. Even the so-called ancient aura was simply a disguise. He was a little speechless. These gods were actually here to swindle people. Could it be that some people would really be fooled? When the stall owner saw Yi Shiwen activating the Eye of Redemption, he could immediately tell from the expression on his face that Yi Shiwen had completely seen through his so-called ancient divine artifact. He couldn't help but smile brightly. However, he didn't stop at all and continued to shout. Golden-back dragon carp. This golden-back dragon carp was brought out from the endless abyss. It has the bloodline of the real dragon. It's not difficult to swallow it to restore one's cultivation. The stall owner next to him was also shouting. Yi Shiwen suddenly became a little interested. Carps were recognized as a race that had the bloodline of the dragon race. However, the amount of dragon race bloodline they had was different depending on the race. There was a saying that carps jumped over the dragon gate and burned their tails to become a real dragon. It referred to the scene when the powerhouses of the carp race crossed the dragon gate, purified their bloodline, and truly incarnated into a supreme heavenly dragon. The dragon race that these carps turned into was also a very powerful race on the Dragon Island. They were called carp dragons. They were different from the ordinary pure-blooded dragon race, but they were also very powerful. In fact, some of them were even more powerful than the ordinary dragon race. Therefore, when these carps cultivated to a certain extent, they would automatically incarnate into a heavenly dragon. However, there were some carp races that belonged to the exception, such as this golden-back dragon carp. This kind of golden-back dragon carp belonged to a special species of heaven and earth. They were born with the ability to cultivate. It belonged to the category of automatic cultivation. Some golden-back dragon carps who had cultivated for a very long time could even compare to a heavenly dragon. However, these golden-backed dragon carps often didn't have enough wisdom. So, they rarely chose to transform into human form. They would often cultivate all the way, and continuously accumulate their power. Some terrifying ancestors of the golden-backed dragon carps could accumulate power for hundreds of thousands of years. This kind of power was enough to kill a formidable god even if they didn't know any magical power. However, these golden-backed dragon carps often had formidable power, but didn't know how to cultivate. Therefore, they had become a tonic in the eyes of many people. In fact, they were very nutritious supplements. As a result, the golden-backed dragon carps were rarely seen in other places, apart from some on Dragon Island. Yi Shiwen had also sighed endlessly when he had read the records about the golden-backed dragon carp. One must know that one could save tens of thousands of years of accumulation of power if one could catch one. This was simply a shortcut. If one could catch an ancestor of the golden-backed dragon carp, it was equivalent to increasing one's cultivation by hundreds of thousands of years out of thin air. Such a skyrocketing cultivation was really terrifying. However, the golden-backed dragon carp was such a precious thing. How could it be sold on the street? After seeing the previous stall owner selling ordinary divine tools as ancient divine tools, Yi Shiwen already had a guess in his heart. Therefore, he simply opened the Eye of Redemption. The opposite stall owner didn't seem to care. He looked very confident. Yi Shiwen's Eye of Redemption couldn't see anything wrong. This golden-backed dragon carp was actually real and not fake. He saw that the golden-backed dragon carp in the fish tank wasn't big. It was almost the same size as an ordinary carp. However, this carp's body was full of the aura of the dragon clan. It had a pair of dragon horns, and the scales on its body were engraved with the profound talismans of the dragon clan. Its back was completely golden, as if it was made of pure gold. Its eyes were somewhat lifeless. He suddenly discovered that something was wrong. Although he had never seen this golden-backed dragon carp before, he had seen its records. It could be said to be an extremely ferocious species. Its eyes were as fierce as a real dragon's, and it had an extremely bad temper. A powerful golden-backed dragon carp could even kill its real body with a slap of its tail. How could it be so lifeless? With this doubt, Yi Shiwen immediately activated the Eye of Redemption and carefully examined it. The aura of this golden-backed dragon carp was faintly discernible. Although it was covered by a powerful dragon aura, this dragon aura didn't seem to be produced by itself. Instead, it seemed to be added later on. The purpose of adding the dragon aura was already very obvious. It was to deceive people. This golden-backed dragon carp was probably dying. It was no wonder that such a precious golden-backed dragon carp was being sold in this stall. How much is this golden-backed dragon carp? I want it. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his mouth and said. The stall owner opposite him immediately beamed with joy. Finally, someone was fooled. This golden-backed dragon carp is a genuine golden-backed dragon carp. Moreover, its bloodline is very pure. If you buy it and train it properly, and if you have the opportunity to awaken its intelligence, your future cultivation will be limitless. Then, you will have an excellent pet. The stall owner chattered on. He tried his best to exaggerate his golden-backed dragon carp. Stop talking nonsense. How much is it? Yi Shiwen said somewhat impatiently. He had a faint guess in his heart, and his heart was extremely excited. If it was true, then he was really going to pick up a great treasure this time. The stall owner looked at Yi Shiwen in astonishment. He didn't expect this sucker to be so straightforward. He quickly smiled and said, 5 million divine root. As long as you have 5 million divine roots, this golden-backed dragon carp will be yours. I am also short of money. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given this golden-backed dragon carp to someone else. All right. Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't haggle over it. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a delicate shout was heard. Chapter 2498. Suddenly there was a shout. The sound of footsteps came from a distance. Yi Shiwen turned his head and saw a beautiful woman in a bright red dress. She was about 20 years old, and she rushed over like a flame. When the stall owner saw the woman in the red dress, his face suddenly turned ugly, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Why is it this girl again?" Although this sentence was said in a very low voice, Yi Shiwen still heard it. He couldn't help but feel a little funny. The woman in the red dress had arrived in front of the two in an instant. She stood with her hands behind her back, and there was a feeling of superiority. "Zhu Yenner, what are you doing here again?" The stall owner looked a little helpless and a little angry. "Of course, to stop you from cheating," the woman in the red dress said matter-of-factly. Then she looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "You must be careful if you want to buy his goods. This guy has a criminal record. He likes to use some fake things to deceive newcomers like you." "How do you know that I just arrived?" Yi Shiwen was a little curious. "That's because this guy is notorious. Among those who came earlier, how many of them didn't know about him?" Zhu Yenner's delicate little face was slightly proud. "Of course, this is also my credit. I can't stand to see newcomers like you being deceived by him." Yi Shiwen didn't expect that Zhu Yenner was such a warm-hearted person. Here, it could be said that everyone was a competitor. It was good enough that she didn't help to deceive you. She was basically indifferent to you, let alone standing up to warn you. "Zhu Yenner, I only deceived you once. I later returned all the God Source to you. What else do you want?" The stall owner was a middle-aged man. At this time, he was already angry. Obviously, this middle-aged man also deceived Zhu Yenner before. At this time, Zhu Yenner kept coming to him. Zhu Yenner's little face was slightly flushed. Her true warm-hearted nature was exposed in front of Yi Shiwen, but then she said, "I said that as long as you continue to deceive here, don't even think of succeeding." Many people around could not help but shudder. Villains and women were difficult to deal with. The ancients were right. It was better to offend villains than to offend women. This stall owner had only cheated her once, but she actually wanted to ruin his good fortune so badly that she wouldn't stop until she was dead. Many of the people around them were also stall owners, and many of them were swindlers. At this moment they all felt lucky. Fortunately, this girl was swindled by this guy as soon as she came in, and they didn't have time to swindle her. Otherwise, it would be terrible. Yi Shiwen raised the corner of his mouth. Although there was a secret that he did not know, Zhu Yenner was indeed not a bad person. "Now you know that I'm doing this for your own good. If you were cheated by him, I'm afraid you would cry in the toilet." Zhu Yenner was a little proud. Using 5 million divine roots to buy a dead fish is simply not worth it. "I see that you don't know either. After the golden-backed dragon carp dies, its skills will dissipate quickly. It is not of much use at all." That stall owner looked at Zhu Yenner and wanted to explain, but in the end, he did not say anything. Obviously, Dui was also quite afraid of Zhu Yenner. "Alright, thank you for the reminder. Boss, you are too unkind." Yi Shiwen looked at that stall owner and said, "This kind of thing depends on your judgment. I did not force you to buy or sell," said that stall owner, a little depressed. How many of his plans had been ruined by this girl? He could have deceived a few rich people, but in the end it was all gone. "That's true. How about this? I will buy this dead fish for 500,000 divine source. How about that?" asked Yi Shiwen. That stall owner looked at Yi Shiwen, dumbfounded. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to say this. He knew that it was a dead fish, but he still dared to buy it. 500,000 is too little," the stall owner said unwillingly. "Apart from me, who else is willing to buy this dead fish?" Yi Shiwen said calmly. That stall owner was helpless. He was about to cry his eyes out. It seemed like he was right. Zhu Yenner had her eyes on him. It would not be easy to pretend to be a live fish and sell it. And apart from this seemingly stupid person, no one else would buy a dead golden-backed dragon carp. "Hey, Didn't you hear what I said just now? This is a dead fish and you still want to buy it? Zhu Yan'er suddenly said. She did not understand and was even a little unhappy. If he still wanted to buy it, then all her efforts would have been in vain. It was really infuriating. The surrounding people were also dumbfounded. They did not know what to say. Is this person stupid? Forget about being cheated previously. Now that he knows that it is a dead fish, he still wants to buy it. Of course, a dead golden-backed dragon carp could not possibly be worthless. Not to mention 5 million divine source, even 500,000 divine source was a little difficult. If this was a living golden-backed dragon carp from its age, 50 million divine source would be worth it. Not only Zhu Yan'er, but everyone else was also a little dumbfounded. They did not dare to believe that Yi Shiwen still wanted to buy it for 500,000 divine source. I heard it, but it is still useful, Yi Shiwen said with a laugh. Since he had already said so, Zhu Yan'er had no other choice. The middle-aged stall owner looked at Zhu Yan'er provocatively. Although he was afraid of her identity and didn't dare to do anything, he still wanted to vent his anger. This Dharma artifact is for you too. The stall owner seemed to want to buy one and get one free. He even gave Yi Shiwen this fish tank Dharma artifact. This fish tank was exquisitely made, but it actually did not cost much divine source. Alright then. Yi Shiwen was secretly happy. He gave 500,000 divine source to the stall owner and successfully kept the golden-backed dragon carp. Zhu Yan'er, who was at the side, was so angry that she jumped. However, there was no other way. One party was willing to buy, and the other party was willing to sell. She could not interfere. I did not expect to have such a huge harvest today. Yi Shiwen could not help but smile. He was no longer as calm as he was just now. That stall owner seemed to have realized something. Could it be that he had miscalculated something? This fellow did not look like a fool who had so much divine source that he did not know where to spend it. 500,000 divine source to buy a dead fish was indeed a loss. He faintly felt that something was wrong. However, what was done could not be undone. He did not say anything. Moreover, he felt that he had made a profit from the bottom of his heart. Don't sell that golden-backed dragon carp. Suddenly, another loud shout came from afar. A fierce tiger with golden patterns all over its body and a pair of sharp horns on its head descended from the sky. Someone exclaimed in a low voice. This fierce tiger was an unusual species among the tiger species. It was also a very powerful species, the golden-striped horned tiger. It was said that this species was very powerful. Before they became gods, they dared to challenge the gods. They were very terrifying. What exactly is going on? That stall owner looked at the golden-striped horned tiger and could not help but feel a little strange. I'm sorry, sir. That golden-backed dragon carp has been sold. He seemed to be very afraid of that fierce tiger. His tone was also very respectful, and he addressed that person as sir. What? Sold it? No way. My young master needs that golden-backed dragon carp to break through. The fierce tiger instantly glared at him and said with dignity. Who did he sell it to? I will get it back. Sir, the golden-backed dragon carp was sold to him. That stall owner sold Yi Shiwen without any integrity. However, why does your young master need a dead golden-backed dragon carp to break through? Some of the surrounding people also knew about the origin of this golden-striped horned tiger. They knew who the young master was. They were also a little stunned. What kind of person was that? He could not have anything he wanted. Everyone knew that the golden-backed dragon carp could increase one's cultivation. However, a dead golden-backed dragon carp could not increase one's cultivation. Why did he want a dead golden-backed dragon carp? Idiot, that golden-backed dragon carp is not dead. It has entered a state of hibernation. Our young master said that the golden-backed dragon carp has entered the most critical stage. After this hibernation, it will be able to advance further and become a golden-backed dragon carp king. What do you know? The golden-striped horned tiger glared and growled in a low voice. He did not care at all about revealing the golden-backed dragon carp in front of everyone. Would anyone dare to compete with him? What? That golden-backed dragon carp is actually hibernating and evolving. Suddenly, everyone was in an uproar. A golden-backed dragon carp of this age was already a very rare divine material. If this golden-backed dragon carp could evolve into the legendary golden-backed dragon carp king, its value would increase exponentially. The golden-backed dragon carp king was the king of golden-backed dragon carp. Golden-backed dragon carps were very rare, but there might not even be one in 10,000 golden-backed dragon carp king that could evolve into a golden-backed dragon carp king. That was the most supreme divine material. Even kings would be tempted when they saw it. Not to mention Eternal Realm and Sage Realm cultivators, they would go crazy for it. At that moment, everyone's eyes turned to Yi Shiwen. How could they not understand that Yi Shiwen was not the kind of idiot that everyone thought he was? He was a fool who had been fooled. He had clearly seen that the so-called dead golden-backed dragon carp was on the verge of evolution. It was only hibernating and evolving. Everyone was almost fooled by him. They really thought that he was honest and easy to fool. I thought you were very honest. I didn't expect you to be such a cunning guy. Zhu Yan'er could not help but say. She had spoken up for him just now. She did not expect that he had already planned everything. No wonder he had to buy a dead fish back no matter how he raised it. Oh, I've been seen through. This is a bit troublesome, Yi Shiwen said plainly. Chapter 2499. Oh, I've been seen through. This is going to be troublesome, Yi Shiwen said calmly. Yi Shiwen said it was troublesome, but his expression was not sincere. He did not seem to be in any trouble at all. This matter was naturally troublesome. He had originally wanted to buy the golden-backed dragon carp in a low-key manner. His eyes were so sharp that he could almost see at a glance that the golden-backed dragon carp seemed to be lifeless, but in fact, it was just leveling up and was in a kind of dormancy. On the contrary, there was even more majestic energy being released. This was a sign that it was about to undergo a transformation. With the level of this golden-backed dragon carp, it was very likely to evolve into a golden-backed dragon carp king. That was a priceless divine material. Even titled kings would be tempted. Who would not be tempted to gain hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation? Generally speaking, the higher one's cultivation was, the less useful ordinary divine ingredients would be. Ordinary golden-backed dragon carps were useful to ordinary deities, and even to sage plane experts. However, to king-ranked experts, they were of little use, and were not very useful. But golden-backed dragon carp king was different. Even titled kings could greatly improve their cultivation. Therefore, he did not want to make a big deal out of this. He had secretly kept the golden-backed dragon carp. When it evolved into a golden-backed dragon carp king, he would swallow it, and his cultivation would improve by leaps and bounds. Once this news got out, even titled kings might come to fight for it. He did not want to cause trouble, but he did not expect it to happen. Everyone looked at his calm appearance. How could they not understand that their guess just now was probably right? This guy had indeed known long ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm. He didn't even feel like he had been caught in the act. But you are a little interesting. Zhu Yan'er thought for a moment, then suddenly tilted her head and grinned. Although she had been tricked by this guy just now, it was equivalent to being tricked. However, in this market, everything depended on one's judgment. There was nothing she could do if she was tricked. However, if she could get one or two good things, it was also because she had good judgment. Even she could not tell that this golden-backed dragon carp was not dead and was in a dormant evolution. But this guy in front of her could tell. His judgment was not simple. Yi Shiwen indifferently shrugged his shoulders. He had bought it fair and square, so there was nothing to worry about. I'm leaving first. Yi Shiwen immediately turned around and was about to leave. Wait. The stall owner quickly stepped forward and said, What's wrong? Do you want to go back on your word? Yi Shiwen frowned, but there was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. I'm sorry, this is our negligence. We won't be selling this golden-backed dragon carp. We'll return you the divine source you just received, and we'll pay you back double. How about that? The stall owner said shamelessly. He had thought about it very clearly. Selling to Yi Shiwen would really make him cry in the toilet. Jiang Yi had actually sold a potential golden-backed dragon carp king for a mere 500,000 divine root. Although he knew that it would be difficult for him to keep the golden-backed dragon carp king, if he sold it to this golden-striped horned tiger, he would definitely earn a huge sum of money. Hee, why didn't you say that you were negligent when you used a dead fish to deceive me just now? Now that you want it back, you should just give up. The golden-backed dragon carp king was already in his hands, and he still wanted it back. He was thinking too much. Friend, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, the stall owner said coldly. Cutting off one's source of wealth was like killing one's parent. From his point of view, Yi Shiwen's actions had already cut off his source of wealth. Naturally, it was as if he had a deep hatred for him. You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Sorry, I'm a person who loves to drink forfeit. I'd like to see what it tastes like. Yi Shiwen's expression instantly turned cold. First, this person used a fake to deceive him. Now, he actually wanted to snatch the golden-backed dragon carp back. This had completely angered Yi Shiwen. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. You probably don't know what kind of big shot the person who wants this golden-backed dragon carp is. The stall owner threatened in a low voice. It doesn't matter who it is. I only know that I've already paid the god source. This golden-backed dragon carp is mine, regardless of whether it turns into a real dragon or a golden-backed dragon carp king. If you want to snatch something from me, you should consider whether you have the life to enjoy it, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Everyone was in an uproar. This was another lawless person. He clearly knew that there was a powerful big shot behind this golden-striped horned tiger, but he still dared to be so arrogant. Moreover, not to mention the big shot behind him, even the golden-striped horned tiger itself was an extremely tyrannical clan. Within the same realm, it was well known, and it was also a battle pet that many people wanted to tame. There were many people who wanted to do so, but only a few succeeded. Most of them were swallowed by the golden-striped horned tiger in one bite. This highlighted the terrifying big shot behind this tiger. What else is there to say to an arrogant kid like him? The golden-striped horned tiger said coldly. It looked at Yi Shiwen coldly, as if it was looking at a dead person. Humph, since you are unwilling to hand over the golden-backed dragon carp, don't blame me for being rude. The middle-aged stall owner's expression suddenly changed. He didn't want to continue being entangled with Yi Shiwen. With a roar, he soared into the sky and instantly transformed into a green-faced, fanged humanoid creature, like a legendary demon. This was his real body. Previously, he had only transformed into a human. Boom! He instantly grabbed Yi Shiwen with his claws. That ghastly claw suddenly enveloped Yi Shiwen. Hey, be careful. Although this guy is a bit shameless, he is from the Sunluo ghost tribe. Don't be careless. Zhu Yenner, who was next to him, said. She was very clear about the background of this stall owner. Dang. Everyone only saw that Yi Shiwen didn't dodge or evade. In an instant, he was caught. They thought that they would see a scene of blood bursting out. They thought that he had no time to react at all. However, the bloody scene that they imagined did not happen. Instead, they saw the Sunluo ghost claw directly grab Yi Shiwen's body. There was a sound of gold and iron colliding, but it couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. It couldn't even make him move a little. How is this possible? The Sunluo ghost claw can't even break his defense. Someone exclaimed and tried hard to open his eyes. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have almost thought that they had seen it wrong. The middle-aged stall owner didn't look eye-catching. In fact, he was a powerful existence in the late stage of the eternal realm. In the middle and upper heavens, such a cultivation might be nothing, but in the lower heavens, such a cultivation could be said to be quite tyrannical. After all, there were many gods who only had the cultivation of the immortal realm everywhere. This was also why the middle-aged stall owner was able to stand firmly without being retaliated, even though he had never changed his place despite being constantly exposed for selling fake goods. It was because those who wanted to retaliate against him couldn't beat him, and many of them were killed on the spot. He only suffered losses from one person, and that was Zhu Yan. He thought that Zhu Yan was a fool who could be easily exploited. Who would have thought that she was also a thorn in his side and taught him a good lesson? If it wasn't for the fact that this person had a backer behind him, he might have been killed by Zhu Yan. But now, his attack was easily blocked by Yi Shiwen. No, it wasn't blocked. It should be said that Yi Shiwen didn't move at all. He allowed the attack to fall on his body. His physical cultivation had reached an unprecedented level, and no one would be able to reach it in the future. How is it possible? My Sun Luo ghost claw didn't even have the slightest effect. The middle-aged stall owner said in disbelief. If it was simply blocked, he wouldn't be surprised. However, Yi Shiwen didn't move and let him attack. He couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. This was simply a great shame. I don't believe it. So what if your physical body is tyrannical? Watch me break your spirit. He let out a loud roar, and his ghostly claw once again stretched out. Suddenly, an overwhelming aura pervaded the air, and turned into a big hand in the sky. It was like a small mountain, and it pressed down towards Yi Shiwen. On this palm, there was even a very powerful figure with a green face and fangs. It was a peerless ghost emperor who once dominated the heavens. Now his figure was revealed, and it was very terrifying. This ghost aura directly rushed into Yi Shiwen's mind, and the space was shattered everywhere. It was very terrifying, and the endless space was shaken into fragments. However, Yi Shiwen didn't move in the slightest. On the contrary, he still looked very indifferent, and there wasn't the slightest change from before. Only this time, he finally counterattacked. A thunder dragon jumped out of his body, and instantly grew bigger and bigger. It expanded against the wind, and opened its bloody mouth, and swallowed the big hand of the ghost emperor. Rumble! As the big hand was swallowed, the ghost aura that filled the sky also collapsed in the air, and completely collapsed. The ghost aura that was swallowed still wanted to cause trouble, but it was all suppressed by the power of thunder. To deal with this kind of evil power, the power of thunder was almost handy. It restrained the ghost aura, and after a while, it exploded. The ghost hand was broken, and the middle-aged stall owner spat out a mouthful of blood. He retreated again, and he couldn't stop it at all. There was incomparable horror in his eyes. The terrible power of thunder directly jumped on his body, and all the ghost aura that protected his body collapsed. No matter how he wanted to dodge, it was useless. As a punishment, I will abolish your martial arts. Let's see if you can still go around and cheat people in the future. Yi Shiwen said coldly. With a swish, he took a step forward, and instantly rushed in front of the middle-aged stall owner. Chapter 2500. He rushed to the front of the middle-aged stall owner and blasted a punch. The terrifying fist energy pierced through the void, directly went up to the sky and smashed the sky. Behind him, there was an infinite power of thunder. The vast power of thunder filled the world, and a thunder dragon shuttled in it. This was the power of heaven's retribution, and it was now under his control. These thunder dragons constantly intertwined and occupied all the space. All the laws were instantly suppressed, and turned into a domain of thunder and lightning. As soon as he made his move, he showed an extremely tyrannical cultivation of thunder and lightning, and a powerful thunder and lightning attack was launched. The dense ghost energy began to collapse like tofu in brine, and directly fell on the middle-aged stall owner's body. Bang! This punch instantly penetrated the middle-aged stall owner's chest, and his internal organs turned into powder. His whole body flew upside down and fiercely hit the barrier that emerged in midair. This city had existed for countless years, and it could be said that there were such barriers everywhere in the city. Otherwise, these existences, which were all gods, could easily destroy a world, let alone a small city. Roar, I'll fight you! The middle-aged stall owner roared, and his body continued to grow. He was a full 3 feet tall, and a ghost eye appeared on his forehead. It was a kind of magical power that he had refined. This kind of ghost eye exuded a kind of amazing ghost energy, and it actually forced Yi Shiwen's power of thunder and lightning away. His ghost eye opened, and in an instant, the world seemed to have turned into a world of ghosts, and it looked very terrifying. Hundreds of ghosts walked at night, and the roar of ghosts could be heard everywhere. The terrifying ghost energy even spread out, and Yi Shiwen's clothes fluttered in the wind. You forced me to use this move, you should be proud, the middle-aged stall owner roared. He forcibly suppressed the injuries on his body, and Yi Shiwen's punch had penetrated his body. If he didn't have such a trump card, he would have lost the confidence to continue to fight against Yi Shiwen. But now there was no way out, not to mention that he still had hope after using this move. The Ghost Emperor's Eye. Could it be the legendary Ghost Emperor's Eye? This guy looks unremarkable, but who would have thought that he could actually cultivate such a legendary eye? Legend has it that it's a divine ability cultivated by the ghost race's invincible entity, the Ghost Emperor. It represents the supreme power of the world. Rumor has it that this kind of eye has unparalleled magical effect. In the Ghost Clan, it should be considered an extremely powerful magical ability. Seeing the Ghost Emperor's eye above his head, everyone was astonished. No one had expected this middle-aged stall owner to have hidden his strength so deeply. Even the golden-striped horned tiger's eyes were filled with fear. Initially, it didn't take this middle-aged stall owner seriously, but things were different now. Perhaps it was time to pay more attention to him. After the middle-aged stall owner from the Sunluo ghost tribe took out the Ghost Emperor's eye, his magic power skyrocketed. He was like a powerful ghost god that fused with the heaven and earth. There was no gap between him and the heaven and earth. The heaven and earth were filled with the wails of ghosts and howls of wolves, as if the heaven and earth were crying. At this moment, the middle-aged stall owner seemed to be the reincarnation of the Ghost Emperor. Wherever the gaze of this Ghost Emperor's eye passed, the sky would shatter. Countless ghosts would howl, turning the place into hell. A huge armor formed around his body, protecting him. It was as if the real Ghost Emperor had been reborn. Although this race was low-key now, it had once been extremely glorious. In the past, there was a Ghost Emperor that shook the world. He wreaked havoc in the world and tried to turn the world into a ghost realm. Later on, he provoked an old emperor of the human race, who killed him. However, this didn't damage the prestige of the Ghost Emperor. This was because the emperor who killed him was none other than Holy Emperor Xianyuan. When the Holy Emperor was reborn, he was almost invincible in the world. If there were strong and weak emperors, then Holy Emperor Xianyuan would undoubtedly be the best among them. No one could be compared to him. After the Ghost Emperor was killed, this race quickly declined and became more and more low-key. However, no one dared to underestimate this race. The Ghost Emperor's eye. You didn't cultivate it. Someone must have sacrificed it. Later on, you obtained it and integrated it into your body. This power doesn't belong to you. It should be eroding your power all the time. It's really sad. Yi Shiwen sneered. He opened the Eye of Redemption and saw it in an instant. Although the Ghost Emperor's eye seemed powerful, it wasn't condensed by him. He just obtained it by accident. Then, he smelted it into his body. After all, it wasn't cultivated by him. Moreover, he couldn't control it. Even when the Ghost Emperor's eye was opened, it was absorbing his spiritual power and life essence every minute and second. This was very fatal even for a deity. So what? As long as I kill you, I can make up for all my losses this time. In fact, I can even go further. So you should die. This middle-aged stall owner had gone completely crazy. His ghostly claws tore the void. The terrifying power formed a black crack and spread towards Yishiwen. The Ghost Emperor's eye is a little interesting. However, it's only a little interesting. There's still no way to make up for the gap between you and me. Yishiwen sneered. He just stretched out his hand slightly and pointed a finger. The spreading crack stopped in front of him. The terrifying power acted on his finger. However, it couldn't even break his skin. Everyone cried out in alarm. They were also scared by Yishiwen's astonishing move. What kind of terrifying strength was this? He had blocked all the attacks with just one finger. This was too abnormal. Although they had some speculations just now that Yishiwen's physical cultivation was very strong, they didn't expect that Yishiwen could block his attacks with one finger. This was no longer abnormal. He was simply a monster. Impossible! The middle-aged stall owner roared. His roar was like thunder. He stepped out and his ghostly figure flickered in an instant. He directly flashed in front of Yishiwen and clawed at Yishiwen. He appeared and disappeared like a ghost. He was as fast as lightning. Moreover, his power was also extremely terrifying. He easily tore the sky apart like a painting. Humph! Yishiwen snorted coldly. He blasted out a punch and collided with the opponent's ghostly claws. Bang! There was a terrifying collision sound. The middle-aged stall owner screamed. His entire arm was crushed into a cloud of blood mist on the spot. The middle-aged stall owner's cultivation could be said to be extremely strong among those in the same realm. However, compared to Yishiwen, he was far inferior. He was already not Yishiwen's opponent thousands of years ago, let alone thousands of years later. The two of them were not on the same level at all. Whoosh! The middle-aged stall owner's body flew out. However, the Ghost Emperor's eye on the top of his head suddenly opened. It shot out a terrifying ghostly aura, forming a powerful shock wave that rushed towards Yishiwen. However, in everyone's eyes, this terrifying attack that could even distort time and space was blocked by Yishiwen with his bare hands. He crushed it into dust. How is this possible? The middle-aged stall owner's eyes widened in incomparable shock. In fact, he had never failed before. Even if it was the peak of Eternal Realm who was stronger than him, he would also be seriously injured if he was not careful. Yishiwen had easily turned such an attack into nothingness. Such strength was really terrifying. Why is it impossible? He heard a ghostly voice. He didn't know when Yishiwen had appeared in front of him. He stretched out a hand to grab his Ghost Emperor's eye. Because Yishiwen's speed was too fast, he didn't even have time to react. He only felt a sharp pain. The Ghost Emperor's eye was directly dug out. Suddenly, a huge bloody hole appeared on his forehead. Ah, it hurts so much! The middle-aged stall owner couldn't help but scream again and again. The Ghost Emperor's eye was directly connected to his spirit. Yishiwen directly dug out a huge part of his spirit. Even a large part of his spirit was dug out by a terrifying force. He rolled on the ground in pain. You deceive outsiders all day, and you still want to go back on your words. I originally planned to abolish your martial arts, but now I will use this Ghost Emperor's eye as compensation, Yishiwen said while holding the Ghost Emperor's eye. Although he was talking to the middle-aged stall owner, he didn't even look at him. The strength of both sides was like a giant and an ant. The gap was too big. It was impossible for him to fail even if he wanted to. Right now, he wanted to study the Ghost Emperor's eye. Although the Ghost Emperor was defeated by the Holy Emperor in the past, it was a fact that he was a tyrannical existence of the Emperor realm. The Ghost Emperor's eye did have some tricks up its sleeve. It could even be said that it wasn't simple. But unfortunately, it was also broken. It should have been left behind after the original owner was defeated. It was not complete. But even so, as a magical power of the eyes, it was also very meaningful for the cultivation of the Eye of Redemption. How could this be? Everyone's eyes widened. A powerful master at the late stage of the undead realm was simply like a puppet in the hands of this person. All the attacks were easily destroyed. If they had such an enemy, it would be simply hopeless. Many stall owners who originally planned to deceive people almost fainted at this time. Suddenly, they had a feeling of wanting to stop. Sooner or later, they would encounter a ghost if they walked too much at night. Sooner or later, they would kick an iron plate if they did too many bad things. If they encountered such a person again, wouldn't they be miserable? Zhu Yan also didn't expect Yi Shiwen to have such strength. No wonder he looked so fearless. I thought he was fearless because he didn't know. Now it seems that he has a card up his sleeve. Sir, save me, save me! The middle-aged stall owner screamed and asked the golden-striped horned tiger for help. Chapter 2501. Everyone shuddered at the sight of the Sunluo Ghost Tribe's experts, who had been so majestic just a moment ago, being oppressed like dogs at this moment. Sure enough, this is the Kurfürst Road. It hasn't been open for so long that they have forgotten what this place is. For them to be able to cultivate to this level, almost all of them had once dominated a certain era in a certain place. Some of them were even legends in a certain world to this day. However, this was not a place where they could act presumptuously. Geniuses were common here. All kinds of monstrous freaks from various eras ran amok. An inconspicuous guy might be an invincible monstrous genius of a certain era. The era of the Kurfürst Road's opening was too long ago. No one knew how many monstrous geniuses were active in it. The guy in front of them was probably not far from those monstrous geniuses. Many people were terrified. It was not uncommon to encounter a few monstrous geniuses here. If they were to kick an iron plate like this guy, wouldn't it be a dead end for them? Although everyone knew that those world-famous evildoers had already gone to the upper heavens in search of the fabled opportunities, it was still unknown to them. However, who knew if there were a few monstrous geniuses hidden among them? It was also possible for those monsters to turn back halfway. All in all, anything was possible in this world. Didn't they see that the Azura Ghost Tribe guy had even lost the Ghost Emperor's eye? It could be said that he had suffered a heavy loss. The golden-striped horned tiger looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, "Human, hand over the golden-backed dragon carp, and I will let you live today. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences." The golden-striped horned tiger didn't care about the Azura Ghost Tribe guy at all. For it was not important at all. All it wanted was the golden-backed dragon carp. If it wasn't for Yi Shiwen's attack just now, it might have swallowed him in one bite. I'd like to see what consequences I can't bear. Call your master out. I'd like to see who is so powerful. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Human, it seems that you're really tired of living. The golden-striped horned tiger coldly looked at Yi Shiwen. In an instant, it let out a huge roar and instantly transformed into a huge ferocious tiger. It pounced towards Yi Shiwen. This was the condensation of its martial will. It was very terrifying. Boom! There was a huge explosion. Yi Shiwen punched out. It was just a simple punch, but it directly blasted into the tiger. The tiger was smashed into pieces on the spot, and vanished into thin air. Walla lala! Yi Shiwen rushed out of this endless golden light like an ancient emperor. He seemed to have turned into the incarnation of martial arts in a flash. All kinds of martial arts rushed out of his body. Are you tired of living? I want to see who is tired of living. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. Human die! The golden-striped horned tiger instantly transformed into a sturdy middle-aged man. His whole body was full of tiger patterns. There were 2 sharp horns on his head. Then, he punched towards Yi Shiwen. The fist energy twisted into a ferocious tiger in mid-air, surging wildly between the heavens and the earth, bringing with it a powerful Yuan Qi, bringing with it a burst of Yuan Qi frenzy. Yi Shiwen was not to be outdone. The power of thunder continued to rush out of his body. In an instant, the surrounding area became a sea of thunder and lightning. Both of them were quite restrained in their attacks, but such power was still terrifying. A thunder dragon soared into the sky and clashed with the fierce tiger. It was an authentic battle between a dragon and a tiger. However, after a short while, the fierce tiger with the wind attribute was torn apart and devoured by the thunder dragon on the spot. With infinite power, the thunder dragon rushed towards the golden-striped horned tiger, bringing with it a terrifying wind. The golden-striped horned tiger retreated again and again. Seeing that its attack was broken in an instant, it did not dare to resist. It retreated several steps in a row to avoid Yi Shiwen's attack. It looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. It seemed that it did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so powerful. However, his offensive wasn't slow at all. Meanwhile, a long spear appeared in his hand and instantly shattered the blue dome of heaven. The spear light swallowed and spat out erratically, and took the shape of a ferocious tiger. The tiger was constantly spitting out sharp spear-light talismans, and directly pierced towards Yi Shiwen. Be careful! Zhu Yen, who was next to him, reminded. That's a high-grade divine weapon. Yi Shiwen could see that it should have been refined from the shed bones of the elders in his clan. Its power was very terrifying. It was definitely comparable to a high-grade divine weapon. Under the attack of the golden-striped horned tiger, its power was amazing. It should be known that the golden-striped horned tiger itself had the strength of the peak of the eternal realm. With this long spear, even if it faced a master of the sage realm, it was quite likely that it could protect itself. However, in the face of such an attack, Yi Shiwen's expression did not change. He directly blocked the attack with his palm, forcibly resisting the high-grade divine weapon. You really want to die? See how I directly smash your arm with my spear. The golden-striped horned tiger roared and directly stabbed out a spear light that could destroy heaven and earth. Bang! The palm directly collided with the tip of the spear, bursting out a dazzling light. The spear light brought with it a terrifying power. Even a master of the eternal realm would be pierced by the spear on the spot and die tragically. The powerful spear light talismans on the spear light were like the sound of heaven. Once it hit a person's body, it could directly blast them to death. Many people closed their eyes. If this spear bombarded this person, they were afraid that this person would be directly pierced through. However, at this time, a golden light suddenly burst out of Yi Shiwen's palm to protect him. Clang! A violent tremor came, and the tip of the spear directly pierced into Yi Shiwen's palm, but it could not move forward at all. It could not even pierce through his skin. On the contrary, along with this long spear, the terrifying power bombarded the arm of the golden-striped horned tiger. This caused the arm of the golden-striped horned tiger to tremble violently. Its eyes widened. Yi Shiwen's defense and strength were far beyond its initial expectations. How could there be someone so powerful? The surrounding people were also completely dumbfounded. They did not see the cruel scene of bone fragments flying. On the contrary, the high-grade divine spear in the golden-striped horned tiger's hand was simply like a toy. It could not do anything to Yi Shiwen at all. His physical body is actually comparable to a high-grade divine weapon. Is he a monster? Some people could not help but gasp. It was not that they had never seen a god with a powerful physical body, but it was extremely rare to see one that was powerful to this extent. The key was that Yi Shiwen's cultivation did not seem to be very high, but he could actually do this. In any case, it was enough to shock people. Strength of Tiger Roar. The golden-striped horned tiger roared, mobilizing all the spiritual power in its body and instilling it into the long spear. The spear light burst out again, and it was once again raised to a level. It seemed like it was going to pierce through Yi Shiwen's spear. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes. There seemed to be a world being born and destroyed in his eyes, and there were endless great ways floating in it. It was 10 times more amazing. If this is all you have, then you are still far from it. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. He retracted his palm, instantly turned it into a fist, and blasted it on the tip of the spear. Clang! The violent tremor made a strange sound burst out between heaven and earth. Then, only to see the long spear in the golden-striped horned tiger's hand instantly collapsed and flew out. Its palm was instantly mutilated and burst open, turning into a rain of blood that filled the sky. Ah! The golden-striped horned tiger screamed, and its palm directly burst open. Its whole body retreated again and again. Go! At this time, it finally knew that it had encountered a terrifying master. With its strength, it could almost be said that it was difficult to meet a match in the peak of the undead realm, but now it was beaten up by this human being. Such a character reminded it of those monsters. On the Kurfürst Road, such tyrannical monsters were simply everywhere, and it had accidentally encountered one. Didn't you say that I would be responsible for the consequences? I want to see what the consequences are. Yi Shiwen said coldly, and with a wave of his hand, the long spear actually fell into his hand. The golden-striped horned tiger was depressed and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was born with a noble bloodline, and there were not many who could be stronger than him in his life. In the end, he was beaten up by Yi Shiwen. It was simply a great shame. But he did not rush forward. The guy in front of him was almost as terrifying as the young master. It was not worthwhile to fight him head-on. He would wait until he found the young master and then deal with him. His reaction was very fast, and he immediately turned around to escape. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "You want to leave now? Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself?" The long spear in his hand, under the urging of his spiritual power, burst out an amazing light, pierced the sky, penetrated the 9 heavens, turned into an amazing beam of light, and chased after the golden-striped horned tiger. Bang! There was another amazing sound, and the long spear cut through the sky on the spot, piercing the golden-striped horned tiger on the spot, and nailing it to the ground. Roar! The golden-striped horned tiger screamed again, and blood sprayed out. It constantly struggled, trying to break free, and with great difficulty, it picked up the long spear. Enduring the amazing pain of the long spear piercing through its body, it turned into a ball of light and flew away. Yi Shiwen did not continue to chase. For him, this kind of punishment was enough. The golden-striped horned tiger might be very strong for others, but for him, it was not a threat at all, so he was not worried at all. That golden-striped horned tiger was actually defeated and fled. He is really a monster, not a normal person. Many people exclaimed. In the eyes of everyone, although the golden-striped horned tiger was strong, it was still a normal person, and Yi Shiwen in front of them looked like a monster. For a moment, everyone was in an uproar. Chapter 2502. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was as if they had seen something impossible. They were all gods and had seen a lot of things in their lives. However, they were still shocked today. This person was not any monster or monster that they knew. It was very likely that he was a newly risen monster or monster. Not only in ancient times, there were monsters and monsters in modern times. In fact, there would be some monsters and monsters that shook the world in every era, and they were strong enough to compete with those monsters in ancient times. Of course, generally speaking, such people would only show their power in the later period of the Kurfürst Road, but they were already very strong in the early period. If it wasn't any of the monstrous geniuses that they knew of, then it was very likely that they had risen in the past 100,000 years. Many people began to wonder who this person was. With such strength, he definitely couldn't be a nobody. But compared to ordinary demigods, they were less sensitive to the slightest movement in this aspect. Unless it was a famous place like the Kurfürst Road, it would not be possible to reach their ears overnight. Otherwise, they might spend tens of thousands of years in closed-door training. How could they have the time to pay attention to the newly emerged geniuses? At this time, they also sent out the messenger talismans one after another. They wanted to find out the background of this person, lest they accidentally kicked an iron plate, which would be a complete tragedy. Yi Shiwen did not care whether they were investigating his background or not. Anyway, he did not intend to hide it. This time, he had obtained a golden-backed dragon carp that was about to evolve into a golden-backed dragon carp king. It was a huge harvest. Therefore, even when facing the middle-aged stall owner and the golden-striped horned tiger, he did not kill them directly. "Hey, you are really amazing. Your strength should be far more than this." Zhu Yen stepped forward and said with a smile. She seemed to be very familiar with Yi Shiwen. She had a whole new level of respect for Yi Shiwen after watching the battle just now. However, she could also see that Yi Shiwen had not used his full strength. "But if you take care of that big cat, you will have a lot of trouble in the future," Zhu Yen said with a smile. "Do you know who raised that big cat?" Yi Shiwen shook his head. He did not know. "Anyway, you have reminded me of something today. I will treat you to a meal. Do you have time?" Yi Shiwen looked at Zhu Yen and said, "I didn't help. I almost ruined your good thing, but I won't let go of a free meal." Zhu Yen was not embarrassed at all. On the contrary, she was generous. "You're new here, so you probably don't know about the best restaurant in the city. Come, let's go and have a feast." This was in stark contrast to the image Yi Shiwen had given before. He originally thought that Zhu Yen was a girl with a princess's temper. Now it seemed that she was a little bit like a princess, but she was not a little girl who was ignorant of the world. With that, Zhu Yen rushed to the center of the city like a ball of fire, leaving behind a string of bell-like laughter. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but laugh as he shook his head, and then followed after them. "Hiss, I'm afraid this is really an invincible person. I have just received the news. If I'm not wrong, this person should be the leader of this generation in the Hidden Valley, Yi Shiwen." Someone exclaimed. He received the reply the fastest. It might be because the people of his force were nearby, so they quickly found out Yi Shiwen's identity and origin. Of course, this was also related to Yi Shiwen's not hiding his identity. "Is this person very powerful?" someone asked. He had just come out of closed-door training not long ago, so there were many things he was not clear about. This was very normal among the gods. They often went into closed-door training for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years, so it was common for them to not be clear about current affairs. Powerful, very powerful. This person has only been cultivating for more than 2,000 years, but his strength has improved by leaps and bounds. The latest news I received said that he was already at the peak of the Eternal Realm 1,000 years ago. No wonder the golden-striped horned tiger was not his opponent. He is indeed an extremely powerful existence. Many of the surrounding ancient gods gasped. It was not that they had not seen ancient freaks and geniuses. It was not too surprising for him to prove his Tao in a mere 2,000 years. What was more terrifying was that he was already at the peak of the Eternal Realm more than 1,000 years ago. Wasn't that him? Didn't he only spend more than 1,000 years to prove his Tao all the way and improve his cultivation to a level that they could only look up to? If so, I'm afraid he is another monster of this generation. If this goes on, I'm afraid it will not take tens of thousands of years for him to reach the king realm. Some people showed an envious look on their faces. They had cultivated for so many years, but they were still struggling in the eternal realm. At most, they had just broken through to the eternal realm, so they could only wander around in this lower heaven. But this junior, in a mere 2,000 years, had already reached a realm that they might not be able to reach in their lifetime. This feeling was simply a slap in the face. Moreover, it was the kind of slap that made a lot of noise. It was really infuriating to compare oneself with others. If this goes on, it will be interesting. This Yi Shiwen has cultivated to this level in just 2,000 years. He should be a monster of this generation. But the person behind the golden striped horned tiger is not an ordinary person. Now that you mention it, I remember. Could it be Wu Xiu of the Wu brothers? If it's him, then I'm afraid this matter will be really lively. His subordinate was beaten up, and with his temper, how can he let it go? And Yi Shiwen doesn't seem to have any intention of leaving. This time, I'm afraid there will be a fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. At the same time, Yi Shiwen and Zhu Yan had arrived at the largest restaurant in the city, the Azure Sky Tower. Let me tell you, this Azure Sky Tower is considered to have a background. Many cities in the 33 heavens have their branches, and the master behind them is Master Bai Tian. With his strength, how many people dare to not give him face? Zhu Yan introduced to Yi Shiwen. She also guessed that not only was it Yi Shiwen's first time in this city, but it was also the first time he entered the Kurfürst Road. This time when the Kurfürst Road opened, many monstrous geniuses in the world also did not want to be left out, and wanted to go in to find their own opportunities. Perhaps they were not qualified to compete for the fortune of the emperor, but in the Kurfürst Road, there were far more opportunities and fortunes. On the contrary, it was a feast of the gods. Even if they were not qualified to compete for the fortune of the emperor, they would often be able to gain something. Wasn't she the same? Master Bai Tian is also a very famous and powerful existence in the ancient times. Rumor has it that someone saw him fighting against a king-level powerhouse outside without being at a disadvantage. He is very strong, said Zhu Yan. Yi Shiwen could not help but be slightly moved. He was also very clear about what it meant to be able to fight against a king-level powerhouse. Even if it was only against a powerhouse in the early stage of the king level, it meant that his strength was enough to run rampant in the Kurfürst Road in the 33 heavens. No wonder he could open a restaurant in the 33 heavens. It was not surprising that he had such a powerful background. Indeed. Yi Shiwen nodded. Zhu Yan saw that Yi Shiwen was only slightly moved, and then returned to normal. She could not help but be a little surprised. Normally, people would not be so calm after hearing about Master Bai Tian's achievements. She could also see that Yi Shiwen was not the kind of person who forcibly suppressed the shock in his heart, but he was really just surprised. His state of mind was not ordinary, and he really had the belief that he was invincible. Normal people just heard that Master Bai Tian could fight against a king-level powerhouse, and they would not have any thoughts of fighting against him. However, he was only slightly surprised. This kind of determination was already shocking. Of course, this was also related to strength. Having enough strength was called having a card up his sleeve. If not, then one did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, and summer insects could not talk about ice. However, Yi Shiwen did not look like an arrogant person. Did he really have the confidence to fight against Master Bai Tian now or in the future? Yi Shiwen naturally did not know that Zhu Yan could analyze so much from his reaction, but he could also see that this woman was indeed not ordinary. Master Bai Tian is too far away, let's not worry about it for now. However, you just beat up the golden horned tiger, is it appropriate to stay here and not leave? Zhu Yan looked at Yi Shiwen and said with a faint smile. Speaking of which, Miss Yen, you should know who is behind this golden horned tiger, right? Yi Shiwen looked at her, not the slightest bit afraid. Calling me Miss Yen is too distant. It is fate that brought us together, you can just call me Yen Zhu Yen said with a smile. Okay. Yi Shiwen did not act pretentious, and directly nodded in agreement. This golden horned tiger is very strong, and it does not lose to the geniuses of the same level. If you did not make a move, I do not believe that anyone could beat it like a dog. Zhu Yen said with a smile, but what really makes people afraid is its background. The master who subdued it is not someone else, but the younger brother of the Wu brothers, Wu Ziyu. Wu Ziyu, is his brother Wu Zimo? Yi Shiwen could not help but ask. Hey, you know the two of them? Zhu Yen asked curiously. Wu Ziyu was very famous more than 100,000 years ago. Someone specially mentioned him to me, Yi Shiwen said, still looking indifferent. But in his heart, he was calculating. Wu Zimo was an extremely powerful genius more than 100,000 years ago. The reason why he knew about him was because he found out about Jiren Wang. He was a genius of the same generation as Jiren Wang. Although he was overshadowed by Jiren Wang, he was still a person who stirred up a great storm when he first entered the Kurfürst Road. Chapter 2503. In fact, back then, Jiren Wang was the best in his generation. Not to mention that generation, even many other monstrous geniuses were overshadowed by him. It could be said that in the last Kurfürst Road, no one was more famous than him. Therefore, many people had the impression that there was only one Jiren Wang in the current generation. That meant that Jiren Wang was indeed very strong, but it did not mean that the people of the same generation were not strong. And among the people who competed with Jiren Wang, there was Wu Zimo. Although this Wu Zimo was not as strong as Jiren Wang, he was almost at the top level of the Kurfürst Road in the current generation. It could almost be said that without the existence of a monstrous genius like Jiren Wang, he could already do the best that a normal person could do. It was not that he was not strong enough, but Jiren Wang was too strong. This was an existence that was born to become a human king. After 100,000 years of accumulation, in everyone's speculation, Wu Zimo must have entered the ranks of the top group of people in the current Kurfürst Road, a terrifying existence that could sweep the Kurfürst Road. It was also because of this that he knew about Wu Zimo and even thought of Wu Zimo from Wu Ziyu. That's true. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, Wu Zimo could be said to be invincible in his generation. If he did not happen to meet a monstrous monster like Jiren Wang in other times, he would basically be invincible in his generation. Zhu Yen was not surprised. With Wu Ziyu's strength and experience, he was indeed qualified to enter the list of the most noteworthy people of the major forces. On the list of the most noteworthy people of many sects, there was only one information about this kind of person, and that was if you met him, escape if you could. Losing to him was not a disgrace. To be able to make a king's sect mark such information, one could imagine how terrifying such a person was. Presumably, your master should have mentioned to you that this person should be marked as a dangerous person. If you can escape, it is not a disgrace. Zhu Yen said. Yi Shiwen grinned and said, "One day, I will also remember my name on their list." Ha 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 ha. Zhu Yen let out a burst of silvery laughter. At this time, Yi Shiwen didn't seem like a calm master, but more like a fledgling boy. Yi Shiwen laughed and didn't care about it. He knew that the other party didn't believe him. Any one of them could be called a peerless evildoer. Just being a genius was useless. One must be a genius among the geniuses, an evildoer among evildoers. How could it be that easy? There might not even be a few in 100,000 years. Wu Zimo should be exploring the upper sky now, but Wu Ziyu alone is not easy to deal with. Although Wu Ziyu is not as famous as Wu Zimo, many people say that if Wu Ziyu was not born late, he would be comparable to his brother. He is very powerful, Zhu Yan'er said with a smile. Oh, there is such a saying? Yi Shiwen faintly smiled, but he didn't seem to care much about it. Wu Zimo was one of the strongest people in the Kurfürst Road today, and Wu Ziyu was said to be on par with his brother. Whether or not it was true, he was certainly not a simple person. What, are you afraid? Zhu Yan'er said with a smile, and there was a hint of mockery in her tone. What's there to be afraid of? Even if he is comparable to his brother, so what? I am destined to surpass his brother, Yi Shiwen said carelessly. You will suffer greatly if you continue like this. I'll give you another piece of news. He seems to have broken into the Sage Realm before the Kurfürst Road. He wants this golden-backed dragon carp king. If I'm not wrong, he should be preparing to break into the next realm. If he gains hundreds of thousands of years of power, it will be enough for him to go further, Zhu Yan'er said with a smile. Yi Shiwen nodded. He was already prepared. He could see some clues from the golden-striped horned tiger. However, this didn't make him retreat. On the contrary, he was a little excited. Finally, there was a worthy opponent. He might have a chance to release the power that he had accumulated for thousands of years. Seeing that Yi Shiwen was still careless, Zhu Yan'er had a deeper guess about his background. Perhaps he was even more unfathomable than she had imagined. Speaking of which, I am also a little curious about you. Even if Wu Ziyu is not secretive, these things are not known by ordinary people. Even I can't see your origin with my Dharma eyes. I wonder if it's convenient for you to tell me? Yi Shiwen took the initiative and asked. It's not inconvenient. I am from the Vermilion Bird clan, Zhu Yan'er said. Vermilion Bird? Yi Shiwen didn't expect it to be the legendary divine bird. It was a clan even rarer than the Phoenix clan. In the legends there were 4 sacred beasts, namely the 4 symbols. Among them, the vermilion bird represented the south. There were legends of the vermilion bird in many worlds. Some people also mixed the Vermilion Bird clan with the Fire Phoenix clan. The Vermilion Bird clan was indeed good at using fire. Among the birds, the Phoenix clan, the Vermilion Bird clan, and the 3 clans of the Golden Crow clan were famous for their powerful fire attribute clans. They were powerful enough to cultivate their own clan's magical power. However, compared to the Phoenix clan, the 3 clans of the Golden Crow clan, which had dominated the heavens, the Vermilion Bird clan was undoubtedly much more low-key. The people of this clan also patrolled various worlds and suppressed the Earth's veins. They belonged to a clan that had contributed to the world, so they were protected by the power of various worlds. The Phoenix clan had suffered heavy losses, and the 3 clans of the Golden Crow clan were directly annihilated. However, the Vermilion Bird clan had always been safe and sound. Although they had never been extremely glorious, they had existed since ancient times. After countless years, the accumulation of strength was very terrifying. They were probably not inferior to the inheritance of an emperor. The people of this clan were relatively rare. There were only a few clansmen, unlike the Phoenix clan, which had many subspecies. Their descendants could be seen in almost every world. It's rare. Zhu Yan'er smiled brightly as if she was hiding something. Yi Shiwen nodded. If it was the Vermilion Bird clan, then it was not strange. The Vermilion Bird clan was born with the protection of great merit. Unless they were exposed, others would not be able to see their origin. If it's the Vermilion Bird clan, Zhuing Huang. Such a name suddenly appeared in Yi Shiwen's mind. This was also a powerful existence that shocked the Kurfürst Road. Since her debut, she had never been defeated. She was a terrifying existence that was invincible in her generation. Her reputation was not weaker than Ji Renwang. That's my brother, Zhu Yan'er said with a smile. However, Yi Shiwen did not dare to underestimate her. There were not many people in the Vermilion Bird clan, but everyone was a genius. There was not a simple character. This was somewhat similar to the Fallen Angel clan, but there were fewer people than the fallen angel clan. Although Zhu Yen was smiling, Yi Shiwen felt that she seemed to be unwilling to mention this name. No wonder the stall owner couldn't do anything to you. Yi Shiwen finally understood why the middle-aged stall owner was so afraid of Zhu Yen. Not only did she have a powerful clan behind her, but she also had such a powerful brother to support her. No wonder she did things without restraint. Don't misunderstand, this has nothing to do with him. I taught that devil a lesson, so he is afraid of me, Zhu Yen said immediately, as if she did not want others to think that this had anything to do with her brother. No matter what, I have the honor to treat the princess of the Vermilion Bird clan to a meal today. Yi Shiwen continued after ordering a few dishes. Haha, brother Yi, you don't need to be humble. Although I have a bit of a reputation, I mostly rely on my background. You have pushed your way up, and even that arrogant guy, Ao Chaozong, was defeated by you. This is not something an ordinary person can do, Zhu Yen said with a smile. Yi Shiwen was startled. He clearly did not introduce his name, but Zhu Yen knew it. She probably went to check his identity, but he did not notice it at all. She must have used a secret method of the Vermilion Bird clan. My name is not worth mentioning. Like you said just now, it is fate that we met. From now on, just call me Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not hesitate for long, and he quickly regained his composure. Anyway, he did not intend to hide his identity, and it was only a matter of time before people found out. Seeing that Yi Shiwen had regained his composure, Zhu Yen's mouth twitched and she said, "Since there is a local tyrant treating me, then I will eat to my heart's content. Waiter, bring me your best dishes, one of each." Yi Shiwen could not help but shake his head and laugh. Today, his wallet was bleeding a lot, but no matter how he looked at it, it was a profit. He was in a good mood, so he did not care about this. During the banquet, Yi Shiwen also ate to his heart's content. Neither of them were refined people, so they did not chew slowly and swallowed slowly. In a short while, they were full. "Let's go, if this continues, we will become monkeys." Yi Shiwen took the lead and said to Zhu Yen. Unknowingly, there were already many people around them. Although they pretended to be ordinary diners, they could not hide it from Yi Shiwen. Presumably, the news of what happened just now had spread, and many people wanted to see something new. "Why, you are not waiting for Wu Ziyu?" Zhu Yen was a little surprised. She clearly felt that Yi Shiwen had the intention to fight with Wu Ziyu. That kind of fanaticism could not be deceived. "It doesn't matter, he is just a whetstone. If he wants to come, then come. I will not delay my journey because of his matter," Yi Shiwen said with a smile. Zhu Yen's evaluation of Yi Shiwen went up a level. Even if many people were not afraid of Wu Ziyu, they would not be so indifferent. It was not because they were ignorant, but because they were confident. They had a strong confidence in their own strength. Zhu Yen suddenly smiled and said, "But even if you don't wait for him, he will come looking for you." As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying pressure pressed down on the city unscrupulously. Chapter 2504. This was an ancient and vicissitude aura. It spread out and instantly seemed to turn the surroundings into a world of stone. It spread out from the void in the distance. Many deities woke up from their seclusion. This stone aura had seeped into the city unscrupulously and was about to petrify all life in the city. Sure enough, it's Wu Ziyu. The two brothers are both divine fetuses born from the same piece of fairy stone. They are born with the martial arts of stone and are known as stone sages. Zhu Yen's eyes sparkled. Although she had heard of Wu Ziyu's name, she had never seen him before. This was the first time. What a strong stone aura! Could it be that Wu Ziyu has appeared? Although the others' reactions were not as fast as Zhu Yen, they were not far behind. They had originally planned to come and watch the show. How could they not understand that Wu Ziyu had appeared? This stone aura is so strong that it has even seeped into the barrier. Could it be that he has completely refined his fairy stone? Someone exclaimed. In that case, Wu Ziyu should have entered the sage realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to completely refine his fairy stone. It is impossible for him to do what his brother failed to do. If that is the case, then it is terrifying. The sage realm is enough to dominate the lower heavens. Yi Shiwen was slightly moved. This kind of connate life form was very powerful. They were born with a supreme martial art. But at the same time, they were restricted by their connate body. If they could not refine the body, they could not be considered to have achieved the great path. In that case, the higher they cultivated, the narrower the great path would be. But once they refined the body and achieved the great path, then their cultivation would have a breakthrough in a short period of time, and the improvement would be great. After Wu Zimo refined the body, he rose to become a first-class figure in the Kurfürst Road in a short period of time. Now Wu Ziyu was like Wu Zimo. After refining the body, he would advance by leaps and bounds. If he could swallow a golden-backed dragon carp king, he would probably be able to replicate the miracle that Wu Zimo created 100,000 years ago in a short period of time. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. This Wu Ziyu was really courageous. He was actually unscrupulous in the city. When he attacked just now, he was also restrained and did not act recklessly. A city lord might not be enough to make him feel fear, but there were countless large and small forces in the city, and there were many evildoers and monsters behind them. It was just like how the Azure Sky Tower was the property of young Master Bai Tian. Who would dare to mess around here? Wu Ziyu, what are you trying to do? Someone shouted loudly, unable to see him act so arrogantly here. Many people were in an uproar. As expected, it was Wu Ziyu. They all swept their divine senses up into the sky and saw a young man dressed in white standing in midair. His handsome face carried a somewhat cold expression. He was tall and slender, looking like a dragon among men. However, his expression was unusually cold. His body seemed to have turned into a world of stone, suppressing all the other great paths, leaving only the boundless stone path. Many people's eyes were even more shocked and fearful. It seemed that this was not a deliberate leak. Perhaps it was because he had just broken through and was unable to truly control it, so some of it was leaked. And just this little leak was already so terrifying. If he completely leaked it, what would happen? The person who injured my servant and stole my golden-backed dragon carp, come out. I only want him to die. It has nothing to do with you. Wu Ziyu said slowly, his voice cold and ruthless. Seems like you're here for me. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly. His entire body instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already above the city. You're the guy who stole my golden-backed dragon carp? Wu Ziyu looked coldly at Yi Shiwen and then said. He seemed to be constantly sizing up Yi Shiwen. That's right. If you want to fight, come with me. Yi Shiwen took a big stride and flew out of the city. He did not want to fight inside the city. Otherwise, once he let go, no matter how many enchantments there were in the city, it would be extremely easy to have problems. Don't go. Wu Ziyu shouted loudly and directly chased after him. Not far behind him, a fiery light chased after him. If it was not Zhu Yen'er, who else could it be? After Zhu Yen'er, many people directly chased after him, wanting to see the battle between the two. In particular, many people had also figured out Yi Shiwen's origin. In their hearts, they were even more expectant. Both of them were invincible figures of this generation, and they could be considered to have outstanding military achievements. Although Wu Ziyu was famous, Yi Shiwen was not bad either. Thousands of years ago, he had already defeated the Dragon Clan's pride, Ao Chaozong, and became famous for a time. The battle between the two contemporary pride of the generation was no less attractive than the battle between those monstrous figures. Even if some of the big figures did not follow in person, they all swept out their divine senses and chased after them. Yi Shiwen's figure flew all the way out of the city for hundreds of kilometers before finally stopping. As soon as he stopped, the stone chi spread over, constantly flickering with light and shadow, forming a world of stone chi. This stone chi formed on the spot, instantly turning into a world, suppressing down. The stone chi could be said to have chased after Yi Shiwen all the way out. As soon as they stopped, they attacked him. Child's play. Yi Shiwen sneered, raised his spiritual power, and blasted out a punch. The terrifying fist energy blasted out like a cannonball, blasting through the sky, directly blasting into the world of stone chi. Boom! Yi Shiwen suddenly penetrated countless layers of the world of stone chi. In the center of the world of stone chi, a figure suddenly appeared. An even more terrifying stone chi swept down, condensing into a piece of immortal stone, suppressing Yi Shiwen on the spot. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. His palm directly turned into a sky-flipping seal. With a flip of his palm, it seemed that the entire world had turned upside down. A burst of darkness appeared, it was very terrifying, and it blasted towards the group of stone chi. Boom! Yi Shiwen's sky-flipping seal shattered the stone chi on the spot. Boom! A series of explosions sounded, and the world of stone chi collapsed, revealing the figure of Wu Ziyu. His speed was very fast. Almost as soon as Yi Shiwen arrived, he had already arrived. Many people behind him had just arrived, and they were a little dumbfounded when they saw such a fierce battle. This is just the beginning, and there is already such an intense battle. If this continues, won't the sky and earth shatter? Many people looked at this scene, and they were a little scared. If it were them, they might not even be able to withstand this move, and would be blasted to death on the spot. They could all see that the power of these two people had almost exceeded everyone's imagination. They might not be able to handle one of these two moves even if they tried their best. Wu Ziyu did not continue to attack, but looked up and down at Yi Shiwen, and then asked, "Tell me your name." He did not even want to ask for his name before, but now, he felt that Yi Shiwen was qualified to tell him his name. "Yi Shiwen," Yi Shiwen said lightly. "So it's you." Wu Ziyu also seemed to remember who Yi Shiwen was. They were both rising figures of this generation, and he had more or less heard of them, unlike those old people who had not heard of him at all. "Ao Chaozong was defeated by your hands," Wu Ziyu said lightly. "You are still considered a figure, but if you think that you can be mentioned in the same breath as me just because you defeated Ao Chaozong, then you are gravely mistaken. Even Ao Chaozong would not dare to be presumptuous in front of me." Everyone pricked up their ears. This was related to another Heaven's Pride expert, Ao Chaozong. Although Ao Chaozong had been defeated by Yi Shiwen, it didn't damage his prestige. After all, he was still high and mighty in their eyes. It wasn't that Ao Chaozong wasn't strong enough, but Yi Shiwen was too tyrannical. Almost everyone who had seen that battle had the same opinion. Ao Chaozong was born in the golden dragon race of the dragon race, and could be said to have a noble bloodline, but Wu Ziyu was not bad either. He was a divine fetus bred from an immortal stone, and his roots were very noble and extraordinary. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen had not heard of any extraordinary background, and only knew that he swept his way up, and among the three people, he knew the least. But how could someone who could defeat Ao Chaozong be simple? Whether he dares to be presumptuous in front of you or not, it has nothing to do with me. Moreover, I don't think it will be true. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. In his opinion, Wu Ziyu was more or less blowing his own trumpet. Ao Chaozong was in his hands, but with his arrogance, how could anyone force him to not dare to act presumptuously with mere coercion? Wu Ziyu frowned slightly. Yi Shiwen was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined, and he did not take him seriously at all. "Hand over the golden-backed dragon carp, or else don't even think of leaving here alive today," Wu Ziyu said coldly. So what if I don't hand it over? Who do you think you are, the king of heaven? You still want to steal my golden-backed dragon carp? Yi Shiwen said without showing any weakness. Wu Ziyu's expression became even colder, and he said, Since you are not willing to hand it over, then use your life to exchange. Anyway, killing you is the same. Walla lala. The stone energy on Wu Ziyu's body instantly soared, and the surrounding horizon turned into a kingdom of stone. Die. Along with his loud shout, those stone dragons condensed in the air and fiercely pounced towards him. Thousands upon thousands of stone dragons condensed and entrenched in the air. It looked spectacular and crowded around Wu Ziyu. Wu Ziyu stood on the largest stone dragon with an ice-cold look on his face. He looked like an ancient god who was destroying the world. Ordinary people couldn't even imagine the terrifying strength boiling around him. I said before, it's just a small trick. If it's only at this level, then it's still far from enough. Yi Shiwen let out a long roar, and a stone dragon exploded in the sky, turning into powder. Chapter 2505. Yi Shiwen smashed the stone dragon with just one punch, turning it into talisman fragments that drifted everywhere. Each of these stone dragons was made of endless stone chi, condensed from the talismans of the stone path. They were very terrifying, comparable to gold and iron, but they were completely unable to do anything to Yi Shiwen. Do you think this is all? Wu Ziyu said coldly. Above his head, a little immortal spiritual chi appeared, as if it was the starting point of all the stone chi, and also the origin of all the stone chi. This was a little bit of his immortal true spirit. More stone chi spread out from his body, forming a frenzy. Whoosh! With a shrill sound, the stone dragons were like sharp swords all over the sky, piercing through space and sweeping towards Yi Shiwen. The power he displayed had surpassed the peak of the imperishable realm, reaching a realm that no one had ever reached before or since. Sure enough, he has cultivated to the sage realm. What terrifying power! An existence who was also at the peak of the imperishable realm could not help but say with a trembling voice. Even though they were far away, just the aura alone made them feel a kind of unparalleled power. Wu Ziyu, who had cultivated to the sage realm, was almost invincible. Unless there was also an existence of the sage realm, it was impossible to compete with him. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast, shuttling through the stone dragons, constantly bombarding them. Every punch shattered the sky, shattering a stone dragon. Any one of these stone dragons that filled the sky could easily kill a powerful imperishable realm master, but they kept exploding in his hands. This scene also stunned the people watching from afar. Was this still a human? How could he be so terrifying? His physical body was simply tyrannical and amazing. I said, if this is all you can do, you are still far from it. Yi Shiwen's figure was very relaxed, and his figure was also very leisurely. So fast. Zhu Yen saw Yi Shiwen's figure constantly shuttling, but not a single stone dragon could hit him. She originally thought that she had overestimated Yi Shiwen, but in fact, at this time, she realized that he seemed to have underestimated her. Even though Wu Ziyu had used tyrannical power that exceeded the imperishable realm, he still could not do anything to him. Who the hell is this person? At this moment, even Wu Ziyu's expression changed slightly. He originally thought that Yi Shiwen was only an ordinary imperishable stage. Although he had some ability, compared to him, he was still far from it. He didn't expect that Yi Shiwen's hidden strength would be so strong. He had been very confident in himself. Although there were countless monsters on the Kurfürst Road, he was at least one of them and would not lose to anyone. You're distracted. While he was thinking about this, Yi Shiwen suddenly rushed in front of him. Then, he heard a loud sound of breaking through the air, and the space suddenly shattered. Yi Shiwen had rushed in front of him without him knowing. Human Dao Fist. He punched out and instantly turned into a human path world. He punched out and shattered the layers of space, directly blasting Wu Ziyu's real body behind the endless space. Bang! Caught off guard, Wu Ziyu was actually sent flying. Cracks began to appear on his chest, injuring his vital energy. Xiao! There was a loud sound of breaking through the air. Wu Ziyu directly crashed into a divine mountain, dragging out a huge crack. How is this possible? Wu Ziyu has clearly displayed power that exceeds the imperishable realm. How is he still injured? Many people stared with their eyes wide open. If Wu Ziyu was only unable to easily take down Yi Shiwen before, it could be pardoned. Now that Yi Shiwen sent Wu Ziyu flying with a punch, it was a bit against everyone's understanding. In everyone's view, when a sage realm cultivator faced an imperishable realm deity, they had unimaginable suppressive power. It was not that there were none who could compete with them, but Wu Ziyu obviously could not be an ordinary sage realm cultivator. He should be one of the best. Bang! With a bang, the entire divine mountain suddenly exploded. Wu Ziyu's figure jumped out from within. He looked a bit disheveled, but the cracks on his chest had already been healed. With his cultivation and methods, it was a piece of cake. At this moment, his expression was extremely ugly. Not only had he not taken down Yi Shiwen, but he had also been sent flying by a punch. It was simply a great humiliation. He did not know if a sage realm cultivator being sent flying by an imperishable realm cultivator was unprecedented, but for him, this was already the greatest humiliation in his life. He had never felt this way before. "You have completely angered me," Wu Ziyu said coldly. "So what? I just said that it is impossible for you to defeat me at this level. Use your full strength. Let me see how amazing the sage realm is," Yi Shiwen said, not giving in at all. Stone sword. Wu Ziyu put his hands together and created a stone sword from the void. It looked extremely crude, like the stone swords made by people in the Stone Age. However, this stone sword burst out with a chilling aura of stone qi and sword qi. Wu Ziyu's martial Dao cultivation was truly extraordinary. He was actually able to fuse sword qi and stone qi into one. This seemingly crude stone sword was condensed with many talismans of the stone Dao and sword Dao, entangling together to form a terrifyingly powerful divine weapon. The divine radiance constantly flowed on the sword like streams of light. Boom! Under Wu Ziyu's brandishing, the stone sword slashed down, directly blasting towards Yi Shiwen. A huge crack was easily torn in the sky, stone qi and sword qi crisscrossed everywhere. "Watch out!" Zhu Yan'er could not help but warn him. The power of this stone sword made even her feel a little fearful. She could not help but warn him, because she saw that Yi Shiwen did not dodge at all and punched forward. She had seen such a scene before when Yi Shiwen dealt with the golden-striped horned tiger. However, how could that golden-striped horned tiger be compared to Wu Ziyu? The two were not at the same level at all. Although the spear of the golden-striped horned tiger was terrifying, it could not be compared to the stone sword at all. Boom! There was a huge explosion like the sound of gold and iron colliding. Yi Shiwen heard Zhu Yan'er's scream, but he did not stop at all and directly punched forward. Endless ripples spread out in an instant, annihilating atoms in the sky, causing endless explosions, forming a shocking tide, forming a huge mushroom cloud, slowly rising. The collision this time contained an astonishing amount of power. In such a terrible explosion, many people's divine thoughts were useless. They could not see clearly at all. They opened their magic eyes one after another and saw clearly. In the midst of it, they saw Yi Shiwen's figure suddenly rushing out, bringing with it a terrifying wave of air that blew away everything. The sword fell directly on Yi Shiwen's fist. It only annihilated the endless power of thunder, but it could not hurt Yi Shiwen's body. It was as if all the power of thunder in his body was concentrated in his fist, contending with the sword chi of the stone sword. Not enough, not enough! Yi Shiwen's body flashed all kinds of light at the same time. The 5 Emperors' battle suit and the powerful Thunderbolt battle suit were all on his body. It looked like he was an emperor who was on an expedition, powerful and invincible. Qin Xiaoyan grabbed the sword in the stone, a terrifying divine artifact that could not even break through his skin. Qin Xiaoyan made use of the momentum to instantly appear before Wu Ziyu. He rushed to attack. What kind of terrifying fleshly body is this? I have never seen anyone with such a powerful fleshly body. It is said that Wu Ziyu's sword in the stone is a magic artifact that was born alongside him. As he grew, it continued to grow. No one has ever dared to use their fleshly body to block it. Yes, no matter how powerful a person is, they will be cut in half by the sword chi. If they are contaminated by the stone chi, they will be directly petrified. However, Yi Shiwen seems to have a battlesuit to isolate the stone chi, so he will not be petrified. Zhu Yenner's eyes were like flames. This was her magic eyes. She clearly saw that the power of the 5 elements was circulating in Yi Shiwen's body, isolating all the stone chi. Therefore, the stone chi that could make others pale at the mention of it could not do anything to him at all. This also made one of Wu Ziyu's trump cards completely ineffective. What was the point of a trump card that could not be used at all? It was completely meaningless. But at the same time, she was also very clear that it looked simple, but to isolate the stone chi was not so simple. Because Wu Ziyu's stone chi was brought from the celestial stone, and the quality was very high. Just a little bit was enough to petrify the world. Even if she encountered it herself, she would need to use all her strength to resist the stone chi in the stone sword. She could not be as free as Yi Shiwen, and her body could not forcibly resist the stone sword. He is indeed a monster. If this goes on, maybe one day, he will be added to the list of dangerous people of the major forces. Zhu Yenner said with a chuckle. Seeing that there was no problem with Yi Shiwen, she was relieved. Bang! At the same time, Yi Shiwen had already punched Wu Ziyu's body again. Suddenly, his chest was smashed again, and his whole body fell 100 miles away like a meteor. When the crowd saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. It was not that they had not seen the tyrannical Eternal Realm, which was said to be able to fight against the Sage Realm, but that was only the weakest existence in the Sage Realm. They had never heard of a strong person like Wu Ziyu being abused like this. 2 punches sent him flying twice. Wu Ziyu was probably completely crazy. This was a great shame. It was really embarrassing for a Sage Realm to be abused like this by an Eternal Realm. Many people were even muttering in their hearts, was he really only in the Eternal Realm? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.